Hi. What's up, everyone? Normal American Show, Rob Noor. How's it going? I really gotta fix his light. Only one of my overhead lights is working. I'm never in my office until I'm literally streaming. I feel like I should spend some more time in here. Anyways, here I am. We streaming tonight, boys. At least, I don't know, until I fall asleep. I am tired, is all get out. I thought, I didn't plan on streaming tonight, but hey, why not? Why not? My man stayed at his grandma's tonight. We were out with him all day. We have a state park, state forest, right near us. So we were in the forest with him all day. We went to a deer ranch to see the big deer they have there. And we went to a little mini zoo called the Farmer's Inn. And it was a busy day for us. Went to a playground. Had a lot of fun. And we went back to dinner at grandma's, and then he was watching SpongeBob with grandma and wanted to spend the night. So I came home. He's 3. Hank's 3. So me and the wife came home, and she's reading a book because that's what she does because she's a reasonable person. And I'm probably going to talk to lefties that are insane because that's what I do because I'm an unreasonable person. What can you do? Hobbies are hobbies, I guess. So, yeah, I don't really have a planned show this evening. Hopefully we could chum in some debaters, just talk about whatever people may like to talk about. Talk about price fixing, Kamala Harris price fixing. We can talk a little about that. Answer to prompt. Nah, yeah. Yeah, I hear you, John Tusher, yeah. You tagged Pisco? Yeah, maybe Pisco will come in. Yell at him for a while. I think his boy's debating on Dylan Burns' show, so he's probably watching that. He probably ain't calling in. You know how that crew is. You know. But I'm a villain. What do I know? I'm a big meanie. I'm so rude to people. I'm so mean. Womp, womp, womp. What chance am I giving Trump? Around 5%. We'll say 6%. Idea, set up a P.O. box we could send stuff. I had one, and then I left it run out because I never got anything. But I could do that again. If people want to send stuff, I could set up a P.O. box. Maybe that's something I'll talk to the wife about. It's not that expensive. My home address is really weird, too. Like, where I go for my post office, it's like, there's a post office right near me, but it's not my post office. Yeah, dude, last night, average Destiny fan, right? Nah, I can't say that. That's unfair. There are Destiny fans that are like that, though. If you missed last night's show, it was a doozy. Some mealy-mouthed guy that said like every other word called in and didn't do so well. And then finally admitted that he's all for Democrats inciting violence against Trump, presumably Trump supporters, and wishes that the attempt on Trump's life had succeeded. Of course. That's where the title of this show comes from. Can we take a call in tonight? That's just, we could make fun of, or they could beat me up, or I could beat them up verbally. And then no one calls for the death of someone else. That would be nice. That'd be great. That'd be a great stream, right? Yeah, hopefully Black Elk's clipping that. He did. He put the clip he put out today, I thought was very, very fun. Thank you. I try to be a level head. Yeah, I don't know that I help the division of America. I vehemently despise the institutions and the establishment and the corruption I see within it. I just don't see, I don't have it in me to hate people that disagree with me. I really don't. I think that it's okay to disagree with someone and not despise them. I have many relationships where we've just amicably agreed to not talk about politics and stuff because... start TikTok raids tonight because I don't know how to join them on my computer. That's one. Yeah, old Joe, that shit happens all the time. I'm constantly told what I'm allowed to say. Am I concerned that the insanity of the left is going to usher in an authoritarian right? I mean, that's somewhat of a concern. That's the old Norm Macdonald joke, right? Where he's like, my concern is that radical Islamic terrorists will launch a dirty bomb over a major city in the United States and kill millions of people. And then think of the backlash against the Muslim people. Right. Yeah, I guess maybe the right can become more authoritarianism. Do I have a disagreement line? You mean people that want to call in and argue with me? Yeah, I got Discord. You can call in on that. Ask Andrew how he was doing it a couple nights ago. Yeah, I need to get in touch with him anyways, but Hippy Dippy needs me. Danvo asked me if I wanted to be on it. I said sure. And then they were like, oh, never mind. We got Lauren Southern and AJW. I said, okay, cool. So I think they're bigger names than me. So I don't begrudge a channel wanting to have bigger names. Fine by me. Remember, tomorrow night will be my debate with Elder Drazi. Yeah, look at that. Imaginarium. Read my mind. Yeah, tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Debate with Elder Drazi. With all the drama that comes with it. Whoopee! Yeah! I was a little whiny bitch in the Discord to him. Yeah. Basically true. I don't give a shit anymore. Yep. That's basically true. I'm tired of doing panels where everything's stacked. The opponent chooses the subject. The opponent chooses the moderator. Just so over it. Could I have handled it like an adult instead of like a whiny bitch? Yeah, I could have. But I don't give a shit, if I'm really honest. My thing was, yeah, I hit my loud kids. I want to hear the footy. I'm sorry, Rob, that was a bit much. Oh, I don't give a shit. Anyone can think it's a bit much. I don't care. Am I burning out? Not necessarily. I don't think so. I'm just... I don't know. Yeah, I'll link the Discord, man. I could do that. Give me a second. It's supposed to have one link all the time, but then I don't know. I think it doesn't, so. There you go. Hop on, Chandler. Hopefully you have... My feeling is you're probably a right-winger that's going to disagree with me on something, but that's perfectly fine. Let's see what we got here. Anyways, yeah, Zen, Andrew Wilson said he was going to reach out to Dave Smith for me, but yeah, I mean, I'm open for suggestions. That link should work that I just put there. Anyways, just new in the Elder Drazi. If you missed it, Elder Drazi was like, for months, has been like, you want to debate COVID? You want to debate COVID? He was one of the 4 people on that panel where it was everyone versus me on our institutions broken. The moderator was Wick. The moderator jumped in to make it a 5v1. I didn't care. Towards the end of it, Elder Drazi said something to the effect of he knows more about COVID than anyone. Would I debate him on COVID? I said, sure. He never hashed out exactly what we debate about COVID. I just thought, we'd have a debate on COVID. He could talk about whatever the hell he wanted on COVID, and I would talk about what I wanted. Fine by me. He puts out a post that says, hey, I'm going to be, after I said, sure, we'll do it Saturday. Hey, I'm going to be on this debate with Rob. I don't have to be pleasant or polite. Okay, whatever. So I retweet it. And he's like, oh, I'll send you the subtopics, and then we'll have a moderator that will agree to, keep the timing on the subtopics. An unbiased moderator is like, who do you want? Tomfoolery. The other lefty that's going to agree with them. Okay. And then you sent me a clip. Okay, cool. Maybe we'll watch it later. It's something on genocide. If it's Israel-Palestine, I don't give a shit at all. If that's what you're talking about. Let's see. All right, we got... Who's this person? So we're waiting for the caller. But we'll watch it if we have time, Conservative Carnage. Anyways, tomfoolery. Every time I've dealt with him, he's always against me. He's a lefty. He claims to be a moderate. He's a lefty. Would I be interested in talking to Sitch and Adam? Holy shit, you guys really into the drama tonight. Yeah, but whatever. Yeah, I guess that's true. Woke. I don't give a shit about 2 million people being murdered in genocide. No, I don't. I give a shit, just like I give a shit. Do you give a shit that my neighbor's granddaughter just passed away? Do you give a shit about that? How come you haven't been covering it? That's odd. Jeez, woke. It sounds like you're not that woke at all. You didn't give a shit about that. Oh, do you have other things that are more important that you're focused on, and you think that the United States just shouldn't be involved in any of this crazy shit, and there's heinous shit that occurs all the time, and the best we could do is stop funding both sides of it? So I don't give a shit to the people that want to argue, but Israel's the best place ever, and they have the right to defend themselves, versus the people that says Hamas are awesome freedom fighters and have never done anything wrong, and they're just being genocided for no reason. Yeah, I don't give a shit to wade in that debate, because I don't really give a shit, because I'm concerned that the United States is funding both of those, just like they're funding wars around the world, which we need to stop doing. So glad I can clear that up. And we'll get to Sitch and Adam in a second. So Elder Drazi, this, we talked about this yesterday. I probably bit his head off more than I should have. But then, I tweeted out, was like, it's already going to be a shit show. Now there's a bunch of things we have to, hoops we have to jump through for this debate. He's like, no, I just made requests. I was like, okay, he had a bunch of requests. He wanted a Destiny orbiting moderator, tomfoolery. He said, I beg you to please release the DMs. Okay. Then, of course, you release the DMs, and then a bunch of Destiny simps that are probably also Elder Drazi fans, which is what he's trying to get at, are like, wow, what a bunch of drama. Why are you releasing these DMs? Like, oh, cope. I'm like, because he asked to have, he, quote, begged to have the DMs released. I said, okay. So I released the DMs. I'm willing to accept that I was probably being an asshole. I have my reasons. I feel that I've put in enough good faith. I'm tired of fucking... When do I get to call the subject of a debate? When do I get to pick the moderator? When do I get to pick the when's any of that happen? Why is it always me debating someone that says, this is my expert topic? Why is it always that? Just wondered. But that doesn't mean I should take it out on some guy. So probably being a dick, but I don't give a fuck. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. And I thought I was basically right. Like, I assumed the debate was going to be like, yeah, we'll have a moderator or not. I didn't give a fuck either way. And we just talk about what we wanted. If we want, it's COVID. So, if he wanted to say, I think Trump did a shit job at the beginning with COVID, you want to know what my response would be? Yeah. Whoops. Probably not a lot to debate on that then. What we were talking about, which prompted saying the debate, was talking about things like lockdowns and sending COVID patients into nursing homes. And he seemed to be pretty animated. So I thought that was the majority of what we were talking about. But I was perfectly fine with just saying, hey, the topic's COVID. Let's do it. Let's do a 2-hour debate. Fine. Wherever it goes, it goes. No problem with me. I assume he'll get to talk about what he wants, and I'll get to talk about what I wanted to point. That was fine with... Yeah, Chandler, we'll get to you in a second. I will. Are you on there? Oh, I put the link up. Anyways. Then once it became, oh, look, Rob's shit. And then it was, Elder Drazi throws in a, Rob used ChatGPT for that. Or, Tom, did you use ChatGPT? Rob's going to get wrecked, blah, blah, blah. Okay, at that point, then fine. He already said he felt he didn't have to be polite or pleasant. That's fine. If we're going to treat it like a serious big boy debate, okay, serious big boy debate it is. Fine by me. He wants structure, he says. He wants subtopics with time constraints on it. Okay. Well, it's 2 hours. Let me ask the audience here. In a 2-hour debate, what do you think is a reasonable amount of topics to cover? I know what my preference is, but what would you think's a reasonable? Give me like what you would think would be a reasonable. Ranger and Rogue says 1, 2 max, like 3. We'll see what other people think. Then I'll give you my answer. My answer is I agree complete with Ranger and Rogue. 1 to 2. That's what I think. I think that for any topic that you're trying to have a serious debate on, an hour is like the minimum. Now, sometimes it doesn't work that way. Sometimes you end up agreeing mostly, so then you move on to something else. But in general, he suggested himself 4 subtopics, and then if I had any I wanted to add. Well, what good's that? Then we're going to have what? By the time you do intros, outros, moderators screwing around, Now you have an hour and a half of talking. Okay, so now we have 90 minutes. We're looking at 5-6 topics. So 14 minutes a topic, something around there. Yeah, I'm on Twitch as well. So, he sent me a list of subtopics. He said, what do you think about these? I said, I reject most of those. I picked one. I said, we'll do lockdowns. I want to do vaccine mandates. Boom. We each picked one. And he's been all day pissing him off. Rob's afraid to debate anything but that. He only wants to talk about the things he's good at. First off, this whole debate was him being set up saying he's an expert on COVID. It's his best topic. Thanks, Jabroni. I appreciate the sub. So, thank you, Jabroni. I really appreciate it. And then he just fucking flat out lies. I mean, I think optically, if I'm honest, he's probably winning the battle that when I released the DMs, even though it was his request and I didn't give a shit, I kind of looked like a little bitch. I'll admit. I have my reasons. Fucking tired of dealing with people like that. I didn't think it was a big deal. But okay. But then he just has to straight up lie. Rob rejected all of my topics. No, I didn't. I literally took one, and the other vaccine mandates, he wanted to talk about vaccines and how they're successful. So it wasn't like I'm talking about something that was outside of his wheelhouse. Just the mandate portion. He already wanted to talk about vaccines. So what's the problem? Why is he pissing and moaning? And why does he have to blatantly lie? I'll show you I mean, it's so dumb. I don't give a fuck. It's not like I'm not going to do the debate. It's just hilarious to me. The gaslighting, and it's like, Rob will discuss any topic. Did you miss where Rob said he won't talk about anything other than lockdowns and mandates? I said, you picked one subtopic, I picked one. What's the problem? Isn't that the structure that you wanted? He said, you rejected all of mine. I said, I thought you were a person, because he claims I'm not a person. He's a person of integrity, unlike me. I lie about using AI. That's his claim. So I said, I thought you were a person of integrity. Why are you lying? He says, Rob, it's all there for everyone to see. I don't know what your angle is, but I think you should stop for your own sake. You're trying to clown on me, but you're making yourself look really bad. I say, admit you lied. The topics we are debating are lockdowns and vaccine mandates. Here are the subtopics you said you wanted to discuss. Notice the highlighted subtopic? Did I reject that? Here's what he wanted to talk about. Trump administration response to COVID outbreak in the U.S. in the beginning. Vaccine efficacy, safety, etc. Lockdowns, COVID treatment. I'm open to subtopics you have also, and I'm willing to amend my list if you would like amicably. Tom for moderator, if he's unfair, call him on it. So, literally, lockdowns is what he said he wanted to talk about, was one of the subtopics. I accept that. And then he lies and tells everyone I rejected everything he wanted to talk about. Now, I'm still fine. I don't give a fuck. He can talk about whatever he wants. I don't care. I don't care at all. I really don't. But he's the one who insisted we need to have structure. It needs to be agreed upon topics. And the reason for that, and one of the reasons I was kind of guffawing was, because that's something that's going to happen. Because I have one interest in this debate when it comes to any of this. I was against the government authoritarianism when it came to COVID, period. I really don't give a fuck if you think the vaccine's the greatest thing that's ever existed. I'm not the most anti-vax person. There are people last night that were giving me shit in the chat saying, first wrong take I've heard of Rob, because my legitimate take the whole way through COVID's been like, I don't know, I think the vaccine's probably better for some people. It's probably beneficial for some people. Like if you're 75 years old and have COPD and you have a significant chance if you get COVID of dying, maybe the side effects that come with the vaccines would be worth it if it prevents you in the short term from having a smaller chance of contracting COVID or lessens the symptoms. I just don't know. My advice was, I don't give advice, medical advice. I'm a fat fuck. You should find a doctor that you trust, and you have a unique medical situation, and you should talk to them and make the decision for yourself. What I'm against is the government forcing you. That's what I'm against. Thank you, Roar89, for $10. Says, went to the Iowa State Fair today. I was surprised how much Trump merch I saw. The GOP and Dems both had booths. The Repub booth was way more fun and energy. But it is Iowa. Yeah. Same way here at the county fair I was at. So Am I willing to have him say, actually, the vaccine's the greatest thing in the world? It's fucking best, blah, blah, blah. I'd be like, maybe. I guess I'll talk to you about it. I'll see what your sources are, sure. But I don't strongly feel one way or the other. I'm just against forcing it on people. That is an issue I want to debate. Same with lockdowns. I was against lockdowns. But what about Trump's initial stance on COVID? Go back and watch what my videos were. I was lambasting Trump originally at COVID. So what's he upset about? He's upset that we're not going to debate a subject that we probably will agree largely on. Now, if it wasn't necessary to be a structured, time-limited debate on each of these subtopics, then who would give a shit? It just organically would come up. He would be like, I think Trump did terrible at the beginning. I'd be like, me too. We might think he did terrible for different reasons, but I agree. And one of the things he'll probably say is like lack of PCR testing and things like that. Totally agree. But the Republicans and Democrats in general were shitty on it. In fact, remember, they all came together, Trump included, to sign a big COVID emergency bill that had more shit about hiring minorities at NGOs and shit like that. It was thousands of pages. If it was really just about COVID, it would have been like 5 pages. I bitched about it all the time. So what was the debate we're going to have here? Of course, because he insisted that the DMs be released, my precondition for that, I said, sure, we'll release the direct messages, but then I'm done with direct messages with you. Everything will be out in the open. So, So, quick question. If you were in charge and you had a highly contagious virus that could hinder all levels of your country and has several forms of transmission, what would you do to minimize deaths? Well, it depends on what that would be. I'm not a complete anarcho-capitalist, so I wouldn't say that there's no role for the government. So let's take your example to the logical extension. Let's say that China releases a biological weapon in New York, and it spreads a disease that is killing hundreds of thousands of people a day, and it's highly contagious and will wipe out the whole country. Do we have the right to quarantine New York City? Yeah, I guess we would in that case. Is that what COVID was? No. And what you see is this question, Dan, I'm not accusing you of this, but what happens is people use these hypotheticals. Like, for example, this is my favorite one. Isn't it true that sometimes political violence is justified? Isn't that true that there are times when it's justified? And then you might say, okay, I guess in history there have been times, and they go, see, that's why violence was justified this time. So is it hypothetically true that there could be a virus that would be so lethal that would justify something like a temporary lockdown? Sure. Did COVID even remotely come close to that level? No. Were lockdowns helpful whatsoever? No. Were they massively damaging, not just for health, but for economic reasons, for mental health, many other things? Yes. So what would I have done? I would have done what I suggested in April of 2020, which was to say that there are two types of viruses that could kill many people. The first type of virus is a virus like the flu that has a low fatality rate, but it's highly infectious. The other type is one that has a very high fatality rate, but maybe doesn't spread as much. COVID was obviously the former. It didn't have a ridiculously high fatality rate, but it was spreading a lot. So the way you deal with a virus like that is do your best to protect and give resources to the most vulnerable of society while encouraging the rest to go about as business as usual as much as possible, in hopes that eventually what will happen will be enough healthy people will get the virus to build up natural immunity, and you're using your resources to protect the most vulnerable. That's what I would have done. Yeah, the other thing that I got a little pissy with the tomfoolery pick was, remember, tomfoolery, it was like 2 days in a row I was dealing with tomfoolery because I was like, yeah, I'm done debating January 6th with people except maybe Pisco and Destiny. I'm just over it. I debated every day. I'm tired of it. It's 4 years ago. It's controlling the narrative. That's all they're doing. And then tomfoolery is immediately like, I'd like to debate January 6th with you. I have a different take. Do you think it was an insurrection? Yes, but I think because of the way we use words and the definitions. So another 5-hour definition debate. No thanks, I'm good. Then he DMs me. I'd love to do this debate. No thanks, Tom, I'm good. And then like the next day it's like, wait, who's your moderator you want? How about tomfoolery? Okay. The other thing is, I debated Elder Drazi once. Even though he was a last-minute fill-in, it was a 4-on-1 panel that then the moderator jumped in and was a 5-on-1. So coming from that environment, when someone says, hey, do you agree with this debate with me? And it's like, sure. And then like, oh, by the way, there's subtopics that I'll send you, and we'll have a moderator that will enforce the time limits on the subtopics. I'll get those to you eventually. Oh, and for a moderator, I'd like tomfoolery. You know, this guy that's going to agree with me. I think I could be blamed for being a little skeptical. I could have probably handled it better and said, nah, I'm good. I'm good on all that. We'll just debate COVID. But what's wrong with Tom? Well, Tom's someone who's going to ideologically be on the side of the person I'm debating. So when the person says we need an unbiased moderator and you suggest a biased... Plus, Tom just... Can we be honest? Tom kind of sucks. Can we just be honest? I mean... Who do you think Tom's going to agree with on COVID? Just take a guess, Christopher Coyne. Who do you think? Just take a shot in the dark. Have you ever seen Tom moderate a debate? You love Tom? Well, someone's out there. Everybody needs someone to love him. I don't mind Tom as a person. He kind of sucks, though. Hey, maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised and he'll be a fantastic moderator. I don't give a shit. He can moderate. I don't care. Oh. Yeah, he's a lefty. He's a shit. He's one of those dudes that pretends to be more moderate than he is, but he's a lefty. So, whatever. Now, Elder Drazi could have taken the W that I look like a little bitch. I accept it. I probably did. Like I said, I could have handled it better. I didn't think I did anything fucking super egregious. I didn't. But, once he requested the DMs come out, and it was like, yeah, there you go. And people were like, oh, you look like a little whiny bitch. Yeah, kind of. True. But then he had to fucking go further. Rob won't talk about any of the topics I wanted. Yeah, dude. Literally one of the two we're talking about is one that you wanted. And the other is vaccine related, which you wanted to talk about, the mandates. But who knows? Maybe he'll kick the shit out of me. He claims, for example, he claimed in a post that he never said he was he never said he knew the most about COVID. He said out of all of his friends. But then I was just curious because I was like, I don't remember that. I thought he said something more than that. So I checked his X feed, and sure enough, like 5 minutes of checking, I was able to find that he said he read everything possible about COVID. He spent 3 years getting his hands reading as much as possible. He's an expert on COVID. Oh my God. Libertarian hippie, my goodness. Free market's doing well for you. $100 donation. Thank you so much. Hey, dude, I appreciate you. God bless Scotty. Thanks, man. Fantastic. See, I always have a soft spot for the libertarians. I'm libertarian adjacent. Now, hippies are a different... It depends on the type of hippie. I had a friend that was a hippie, but he was like all the bad stuff with a hippie. Like he was into smelling like patchouli. You know, but he didn't do like the fun drugs and partying. It's like, that's the good part of being a hippie, right? You got to do the drugs and the partying. Not just the patchouli and the, Grateful Dead and Fish, which I can get into a little jam band shit, some Fish and Grateful Dead. Shit, I had a debate show. Aftershock used to moderate. This is a few years ago. Would moderate on Wednesdays. I would do a debate show. And literally that show was 2 hours, 2 topics. Aftershock was the moderator. Aftershock picked one topic, and the person I was debating picked the other. I didn't even pick a topic on my own debate show. Nate G, thanks so much. Super chat, $2. Tom Woods books and websites will get you COVID ready. Tom Woods, I'll be honest, I'm not going to do shit for research, but yeah, nice to know. I'll look it up. Now, here's the deal with me. I think generally I'm on the right side of positions. I do, but of course, most people are going to say that. I think I'm a pretty damn good debater. Probably one of the best on the right wing. But I don't know everything. I'm not super well read. So at any given time, there's a chance I can go into a debate and get wrecked. It could happen. It doesn't, but it could. It's all right. Life will go on. I don't give a fuck. So maybe Elder Drazi will come on and he'll fucking wreck me. He'll have read everything about COVID. And when I start to say blah, 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 he'll say, actually, that's wrong, blah, blah, blah. Could happen. Could. I'm pretty sure it won't. But it could happen. It could. Maybe he is the world's foremost expert on COVID. We shall see. We'll see. I'm all for it. I'm going to try not to bring any of the fucking stupid drama in. Try to approach the debate sober-mindedly. If he wants to get a little more heated, then I'll get a little more heated. We'll see. I will start under the assumption that Tom's going to be an unbiased moderator as best of his ability. And we'll go from there. That's what we'll do. 7 o'clock. I could probably stick around a little after 9 too. So we'll see. Maybe we'll take audience questions. I don't know. I guess Tom Fullery's running the debate, so I guess it'll be up to him, the direction he wants to take that sort of stuff. Fine by me. Don't much care. What's up, Galil? The debate's 7 p.m. tomorrow. So, but he's straight up lying when he says, I rejected all of the topics he wanted to talk about. That's bullshit. He wanted to talk about lockdowns. That's one of the 2 topics. If you debate from logic, you never need to prepare. However, there's not enough time for that. The Destiny debate is proved. Yeah, I mean, the problem is with debates like COVID, it lends itself to looking into scientific literature, papers, studies, right? The same is true in a different sense with like January 6th, where it's like, you have to have been aware of court cases in the 1850s and 1860s. Someone said, would I be willing to debate Adam and Sitch on whatever? Sure. Yeah. I mean, not to relitigate this drama. I talked to P.F. Jung the other day. He reached out and said, hey, Sitch might want to talk to you about the alternate electors stuff. Fine by me. I've kind of mentioned this. I talked to Adam and Sitch. It was actually a show I enjoyed. I was excited to go on and talk to them. So over a year ago, we talked about Burisma, the Bidens, and how I feel that situation was corrupt. Sitch disagreed with me. Adam decided to be a clown the whole time and just talk over me and treat me like shit, call me names, and like meme his way through it the whole way. I just sort of ignored him and focused on Sitch because I was enjoying the conversation with Sitch. It was clear to me that Adam, was just a little sidekick clown, I guess, at least in those sorts of topics. Whatever. So as I was talking to Sitch, they kept calling me biased. Towards the end of the debate, I said that they were biased, and Sitch threw a tantrum and threatened to kick me off the show, even though he kept calling me biased. For me to call him biased was taboo. I couldn't say that, and the reason is because they're centrists, so they can't be biased, which is bullshit. There's tons of different types of bias. Bias doesn't just mean you're biased Republican or biased Democrat. For example, the bias I was talking about was a bias of institutionalism. Basically, unless official investigative sources come out and say something, they're going to be biased against believing it. So if the FBI doesn't say, yes, Hunter Biden was illegally lobbying, they're going to say, we don't believe it. Our bias is that. But that was apparently taboo. They could call me biased the whole time. Adam could joke his way through it. I didn't give a shit. So it ended a little tensious, but I was like, whatever. It was like a 3-4 hour discussion. Didn't care. Messaged them afterwards. They said, hey, if you ever want to come back on the show, thanks, great. We then had interactions several times afterwards where Adam kept saying that I called Sitch a liar. I called Sitch a liar, so I'm not welcome back on the show. Apparently, on the show, I called Sitch a liar. I said, I don't recall that. Can you send me a timestamp? Maybe it happened. I don't recall it. Can you send me a timestamp? And then he never has. And then I let it go. I thought it wasn't a big deal. And so then after this assassination attempt, and you had all these streamers that seemingly were like, good, I'm glad that it happened, blah, 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 shit like that. It was fucking crazy. I was reaching out to bigger streamers. I reached out to Lauren Southern. Said, hey, I'd like to come on and talk about the need to like tone down the political rhetoric to, condemn like acts of violence like this. No response. Reached out to Sitch and Adam. Said the same thing. Adam almost immediately responded and said, last time you were on, you called Sitch a liar. I said, oh, okay. So it seems to me that Adam, if he's speaking for Sitch, that their position is, fuck you, Rob, we don't want to talk to you because you called Sitch a liar. Which may have happened, But I am not going to go back and rewatch a 4-hour debate to see if I had one throwaway line that said you're a liar. I don't recall that, though. I don't recall it. I asked for a timestamp. They're unable to give it to me. Perfectly fine, though. I wish Sitch and Adam well. I just find it interesting then, for 2 weeks later, I'm talking to P.F. Jung, and he's like, hey, Sitch might want to talk to you about this alternate electors things. Oh, so he's over that I allegedly called him a liar all of a sudden? He's over it? Which maybe I did call him a liar, but I don't think so. So in other words, the whole, we don't want to talk about this because you called him a liar, was bullshit. The argument was, we'll pick and choose what we want to talk about, and if we feel that there's a subject we want to talk to you about, we will, but we don't want to talk about this subject. Okay. That's fine. I'm not saying I won't talk to them, but it's interesting how that goes. So, yeah, shit. I'd talk to Sitch and Adam. I don't give a shit. I don't care at all. But they didn't want to talk to me, at least. Now, Sitch didn't say shit to me, in his defense. I don't know how much Adam speaks for Sitch. I don't know. But Adam did. And so, that's where we stand. That they don't want to interact with me because allegedly I called Sitch a liar. So be it. That's cool. I don't care. Joey Mousepad, thank you so much for $5. Says, story about the delay, bro, was dealing with kids in your waiting room with a question. Oh, sure. Okay. I got a question. Hello, Joey. Hey. Yeah, it is. It is. I was like, oh shit, we got another troll here. It's all right. Sure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh.
I couldn't really find anything, and I was curious.
Sorry to everyone listening. I didn't have the desktop audio on. You let them know if this is what you said. Basically, you said you're new to the channel, didn't hear a lot of my views. There's a lot of right-wingers that are isolationists, so you were wondering what my thoughts on that, like when scenarios like Ukraine was.
That's a good summary. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I would put myself in the isolationist camp. I think that there is a theoretical argument that can be made that the U.S. should be the world hegemon and superpower, and as such that they should sort of be a world police and keep people in line that cross a line across the world. There is, I think, a philosophical argument that that is true, but there are two problems with that. One, that only works if we're doing a good and competent job back home, protecting our own country and taking care of the interest of the people of the United States, which clearly isn't happening. And the second and more important argument is, even if that would be legitimate, the actors that are running these institutions in our military-industrial complex, intel agencies, etc., are incompetent and corrupt. And almost always, they make the situation worse when they get involved. As such, no, we should not be involved in any of these situations until we clear up those first two problems. So that's basically my take on it.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I definitely understand a lot of that. Do you think there was a point in our history where we were doing that and it was benefiting us? And when do you think that ended?
I think probably in World War II, the United States came across, for various reasons, probably the bulk of which was geographic location, because we weren't sort of the war front in Europe like so many of our what are now Western allies and what became our Western allies. Like, our country wasn't getting ravaged like Germany, France, the UK, Russia, and so we came across because of the industrialization we had up until that point, and then because of that, we were the clear world hegemon. And I think that probably, and obviously then the nuclear bomb helps, I think probably at that point it was beneficial to the people of the United States for the United States to take on a leading role in the world. Now, I think that we almost immediately start doing dumb shit, color revolutions, etc., that was corrupt to enrich people wealthy people, establishment people, and it wasn't necessarily for the good of the people in these countries or the people in the good of our country. But certainly, yeah, I think that there was a hypothetical argument that at that point, the United States being the world power and sort of being a world police was something that could have been legitimate. As someone who's small government, I tend to think that that's not true, but I understand the argument. I would have to look into each specific case to see when it was worth the United States getting involved. But I think overwhelmingly for the last 50 years, the United States involvement's almost always been detrimental. And it's never for altruistic reasons. Like, I'll ask you, do you mind if I ask you a couple questions? I mean,
yeah, sure, man. Yeah, I'm probably not as well equipped to answer them as you, but let's hear them.
Okay. Do you support us, like, helping Ukraine?
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. Do you think that the leaders that are doing that, so like our military leaders, our politicians, do you think they are doing that because they care about the citizens of Ukraine?
Well, I'd probably have to, me personally answering that, I'd have to separate them because I probably wouldn't. I'm not going to vote for Biden and I'm not going to vote for Harris. Like I'm definitely a conservative. So like the people that are currently prosecuting this war, I'd have to separate myself from them. Mm-hmm. But if the idea of just defending Ukraine in general and how we've done it, maybe I do an even more minimalistic version of doing it, but just in the form of giving them hardware that would have been eventually decommissioned anyway. Like a lot of just hardware expenditures and things we've shipped overseas, I think that's been a major detriment because Russia is definitely our second biggest threat geopolitically. Well, and if we could blunt them, I view it that way.
That's fair, but the reason I asked that question specifically about the people, I will 100% concede that there are a lot of people that are passionate about Ukraine for good reasons. Like, you actually give a shit about the people of Ukraine. Like, I would concede that. Surely those people exist. I don't know that those are the people in our intel agencies and our military, though. And the reason that matters is, do you think that we got into Afghanistan to help the Afghani people?
No, not specifically. Right. I think we got into Afghanistan to establish a base there and
right. And so how did that end?
Lithium trade.
And how did it end in Libya? And how did it end in Vietnam? And how did it end in Syria?
Afghanistan's different than all of those. I think Afghanistan is just the result of specifically the Obama administration pursuing really bad policy and trying to nation build instead of just securing the resources. That's the vulnerability of a democracy, but I don't necessarily think that like making aggressive like.
Do you think the people that were involved in those decisions in the Obama administration are gone?
Some, maybe. Like, I mean, it's,
the bulk of those
stick around.
Right, the bulk of those bureaucracies remain the same. Right? Like, it's actually very little that a president specifically does. For example, when it comes to like these sorts of foreign policy decisions. So if you remember the first impeachment trial of Trump, and you had all these people from the State Department that were testifying against Trump, and they kept saying Trump was going against our foreign policy. Now, that's interesting because as the elected leader of the executive branch and the State Department operating underneath him, he's basically the boss of the State Department. They don't have a foreign policy. Their foreign policy is whatever their leader says it is. But these were holdovers, and these people that it's not just the people at the top, but it's the people all throughout those bureaucracies that matriculate down. They're basically there in perpetuity. Of course, names change here and there, but it's the same ideology that permeates through. And I would argue that the same ideology that went into Afghanistan, that like we're telling the American people, oh, it's to help the noble Afghani people. Oh, we're doing great there. If we're just there one more year, if we just spend a little more money, trust us, we're turning the tide. And then all of it crumbled after 20 years and trillions of dollars spent in 3 days. We were lied to the whole time. And no one gives a shit. No one cares now that the Taliban's putting on military shows of force, military parades where they have an air force now. No one cares that tens of thousands of people in Afghanistan that were our allies are probably tortured and murdered by the Taliban because we left them there high and dry. They don't give a shit. And it's the same story in Iraq.
You think we should have stayed in Afghanistan?
No, we should have pulled out. The way we pulled out was a disaster. But it's the same story in Libya, where it wasn't the United States specifically, but it was NATO, where we went in to take care of that monster Gaddafi, and Gaddafi was repeatedly saying, listen, the people that NATO's helping aren't noble rebels. These are outsiders that are Islamic terrorists. So Libya went from a country with a bad leader who I had no love for, but that was near the top in Africa for things like literacy rates, home ownership, a bunch of other things like that, to now we have open-air slave markets, and the country's completely lost.
Yeah.
And the same people that told us that it was imperative for the noble people of Libya that we go in and we do this and that, where are they now? Same's true of Syria.
Oh, yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you on any of that.
So
I
then
think, all left-wing foreign policy, especially through the Obama administration, has had it wrong forever.
But I argue that they're not gone. Those people stayed during the Trump administration. You could see it when they're testifying against Trump at the State Department. You could see it when his generals are sabotaging him when he's trying to pull troops out of Syria. You could see it in how the generals talk about him after he's been gone, that they've all talked trash on him, right? So those people are still in charge. And all I'm saying is, even if you think we should help Ukraine, the story, I don't know how long it'll take. There will be ups and downs, but I'll tell you the end of the Ukraine story. You ready? The people in the United States right now and in the Western world and in NATO, etc., that are propping them up will one day move on to another cause, and the people that would have suffered the most were the Ukrainian people. The ethical thing to do would have been to try to have a peaceful resolution as soon as possible.
Okay. That's what I was going to ask you a principal question. Like, you don't think there's like any level of like small expense that we could have done? You think we should have just sued for peace immediately? You don't think
that's probably
okay.
Here's things we should have done: not been involved in the color revolution in 2014. That would have been a good idea, but we didn't do that, right? Not have biolabs in Ukraine, miles off the border of Russia that had potential lethal material in it.
But a lot of those are Cold War hangovers, though, right? I remember hearing that. I never did the research on
that. That is true. They are Cold War hangovers, but why are we still there? Like, I believe if I remember reading this, the United States had an agreement to go in and dismantle a lot of these Cold War facilities in like 2004, and yet 20 years later they're still there. What's taking so long?
I would say in general, and maybe this is. We have different views on how the United States should assert itself across the world. Well, Russia's still our number 2 geopolitical threat. Like, should we demilitarize Ukraine? I mean, Russia has shown that they're going to try to reclaim. I actually think that Putin is a revanchist. They're going to try to slowly reclaim every bit of the Soviet Union if they aren't stopped.
Do you think the United States are?
No, I think that we in general are trying to maintain NATO.
Okay, so what is NATO? What kind of alliance is NATO?
I mean, specifically, an alliance to stop the Soviet Union aggression.
Right.
Military
alliance.
Was it formed in response to the Warsaw Pact or not? I don't remember.
Yeah, but it was a military. It is a military alliance. Of course, it was initiated against the Soviet Union. Yeah, but at this point, it's just a military alliance. So if you're Russia, right, and you see constantly NATO expansion, and then you look at the countries that are sort of your friends and neighbors, such as Syria, and you see the United States put troops and bases in Syria, and you see them say, oh, we're just here to fight ISIS, but then proceed to bomb Assad, who is an ally of Russia. Then you see, regardless if you think it's a good thing or bad thing, Ukraine, their president, Yanukovych, was someone who was seen as a friend to Russia. He's basically ousted in a color revolution. There are questions as to whether or not the United States led that revolution or not, but there is no doubt. There is no doubt that once that began, that the United States was getting on board behind NGOs that were pushing for ousting Yanukovych and getting in a more sympathetic Western leader. So you could say that's a good thing.
But that's good, right?
Well, if you hate Russia, but if you're Russia, is that good? What would you do?
Would you not say Russia's our number 2 geopolitical enemy?
Okay, but that's fine. You could say that, but then put it this way. Who's the United States? Like, let's say Canada. Let's say that all of a sudden China has a color revolution in Canada and removes Justin Trudeau and inserts someone who then comes out and is like, yes, we're basically a puppet of China now. How do you think the United States would take that? And then let's say that China then puts biolabs 20 miles off the border of Texas in Mexico. And then let's say that they station troops in Mexico and start bombing, the president of Mexico. I
totally understand why it's aggressive. I would just say at the end of the day, I think that both China and Russia are objectively evil and opposed to our
are you ready to go to war with them?
No, but I mean, in terms of how we should view foreign policy, and if we can support one small country just chewing up their entire military for a small expense, that's dropping the bucket.
We'll see.
The number 2 biggest threat,
you're also chewing up our money as well. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
I would probably disagree with a lot of the things the Democrats have spent money on, like basically keeping like various functions of the government of Ukraine floated going forward. But the military hardware, which would have just eventually become decommissioned, that was an excellent spend.
We'll see. Was it? Or will it drive people to all of a sudden realize that there needs to be a new alliance against sort of the United States? Will they think that the like sort of flippant seizing of Russian people's assets and the aggression on the part of the United States means that they too could be turned on at some point by the United States? So maybe it's time to form some sort of counter alliance. Maybe they'll decide at some point that they need to get away from the right. That's all I'm saying. Do you think that there is a chance that Russia wouldn't have invaded Ukraine if the actions of 2014 didn't occur?
I don't fully remember my timeline on that. I know you're talking about the Maidan Revolution in general, but I don't remember if that was how much that preceded the Crimean invasion by. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know.
That's a fair answer. I don't know really either. I suspect that may have been the case, but I don't know. Putin might just be a bloodthirsty maniac and have invaded anyways. Nonetheless, if you say, well, it was worth us being involved with that, it was worth bombing Assad, etc., because fuck Russia, because they're bad guys, well, we're paying the price somewhat, like our inflation, etc. Average Americans, lower class people like me, we're the ones told you have to suck it up more, tighten your bootstraps, just like under COVID, got to tighten your bootstraps while we send billions to Ukraine.
That's partially because our government are just really weak about it. In general, back in the day, whenever you took on conquests or just took care of nations like this, you set up favorable economic terms for the home country.
Nonetheless, the point I'm trying to make is we're not the ones that are suffering the most. It's the people of Ukraine and the people of Russia.
Yeah, but they want to fight the war. That's the thing. If they didn't want to fight, there wasn't a mandate, I would agree with you.
But no. Maybe if you just said you're not sure if Russia would have ever invaded if we weren't monkeying with things in 2014, is it worth it to them? Is it worth it to the people of Ukraine that they were our pawns then? Sorry, we felt like we wanted to fuck with Russia a little because they're bad guys. Oh, now your country's getting invaded.
No, because I just feel like in general what's happened afterward in popular movements in Ukraine, they've wanted to be more pro-European. Like I don't think that we didn't manufacture that thing going forward. Like it may have the 2014 there may have been some fuckery about, but since then Ukraine has remained they've been unabashedly European and how they've like voted on
some
in terms
sections,
of pursuing things.
Other claims are that the people of Crimea more geared towards Russia, right? But I can't speak to that with full confidence, right? But again, it has to do with sort of what's going on. So like if you listen to Mike Benz, he talks about this. The free internet was considered a utility for our intel agencies because formerly what happened with color revolutions was you had to send like people on the ground to inspire hatred. And the way this works the best is you have a message that's truthful. Most countries have leadership that there will be people within that country that if you give the right messaging will despise that leadership. Hell, you could say that in the United States, right? Like there are people that hate Trump, there are people that hate Biden, people that hate Kamala Harris, right? This is true all over the world. And most countries, it's even worse than here, right? Like if you go to more second or third world countries, there's probably shitty conditions there. And so people, if influenced properly, would have a reason to despise that leadership and maybe have some sort of revolution. What the internet did was a free and open internet. You didn't even have to send people on the ground. You could just send information and tailor information that you were able to convince huge swaths of people within these countries to sort of lead up in revolt. And so our intel agencies loved a free internet until Brexit and until Trump. And then they realized, oh shit, people could do that to us back home. Like, and it's not even outside actors. It's the people here could now communicate openly and say, we don't like the sort of stranglehold that the institutions have on our countries. We want people that are considered populist. And so then they immediately switched, basically because of Trump and basically because of Brexit, that now we need to censor. We need to control the internet. And so for you to say, well, once Yanukovych was ousted, magically then the people that voted him in all of a sudden were like, oh yes, we're pro-West. We're great now. Well, why? Well, because the messaging was getting there from NGOs, because Yanukovych did suck, because that country has been one of the most corrupt countries. But Poroshenko, that was a Western president there, he was voted out for Zelensky, who was a stand-up comedian. Why? Because he was so corrupt. And by the way, the United States, when they were backing Poroshenko, knew how corrupt Poroshenko was and didn't give a shit because they weren't interested in actually having a leader that would look out at best for the people of Ukraine. They were interested in a puppet that would do the will of the United States government. And that's exactly what Poroshenko was. And we sent tons and tons of money to them. And they're basically were reliant on the United States for their sustenance. And so, yeah, that would seem popular to a Ukrainian citizen. It's like, yay, billions of dollars from the United States are flowing in here. And what are we giving up for it? Well, our sovereignty is what we're giving up. We're basically becoming a vassal state in this proxy war between the United States and Russia. And now they're invaded.
Well, yeah, but are they not entirely vindicated by just the aggression Russia has shown them over the years? I'd much rather be a quote-unquote proxy of the United States than be an actual vassal state or just absorbed into Russia entirely. That's being part of the European and American sphere of influence is way better for these people, is it not?
I don't know. I mean, it's similar to saying, well, wasn't it better to bring the slaves over here? Didn't they have it better over here?
Or richer, better healthcare outcomes. I feel like you could measure that. I don't have any of the data, but I feel like pretty confident we would win on that compared to Russia.
Same proof. I'm just saying, I know it's different, and it's not a fair comparison. I'm not calling you a racist or anything, but you understand the same sort of argument could be used to justify why slaves were brought to the United States. Better off here under us.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, what I would say is
weird argument, but
what I would say is I think they would have been better off. I don't think it's an either or proposition. I would like to see countries governed by people that care first and foremost for the people in their country. That's what I would like to see. And I would not like to see countries like the United States and Russia set up these countries as pawns that you have to choose one side or the other and then saying, well, this side's better, so that's good. I think if the United States was benevolent, that they would...
Well, Rob, I think they already chose that.
I don't. Again, I don't. I don't think that. I don't think that they've chosen to they just so happen to be lapdogs of the United States. I don't think that. I think that they probably thought that they were voting for people that were independent and were concerned about the citizens of Ukraine, not that were puppets totally controlled by the Obama administration. I don't believe that. I don't believe they chose that.
You don't think this as like a normal Ukrainian citizen, if you were like choose between two spheres of influence, you wouldn't pick the Western one?
You've reframed the question, right? So I just talked about how there's a third option, and you said, but let's go back to pretending there's only two options.
Okay, fine. Yeah, I'm sorry. I guess I didn't realize that. Okay, so yeah, them being independent being the third option, I still feel like, based on just the historical context of the region, a lot of them would not want to necessarily be independent. They would pick the one that would allow them to be independent more in the future, right?
But they're not going to be. Now they're in a war with Russia. How'd that work?
I mean, let
me ask you this.
They could have folded that. That's why I think there is a mandate. If you go back to
2014 and say, would you rather have Russia invade or not? What do you think they would say?
Well, obviously they're going to say no.
Okay, so then if you said, oh, and by the way, if you vote to oust Poroshenko, Russia is going to invade. Well, because you're going to become a puppet state of the United States that's going to
actually that would probably change some people's minds, would it not? Because then, then you're basically saying if you don't do this political action that they may strongly disagree with, we're going to invade. Yeah, probably different people saying yes and no to that.
The point I'm trying to make is it wasn't as clear cut. Like I'm not impressed by the argument. Yes, the United States should meddle in other countries' affairs. Trust us, it's good for them. Oh, and if they get invaded and they end up having, scores of their young men dying, whatever, it was still better for them. No, I don't buy it. I don't buy that at all.
I don't think that's fully what I'm saying. I think that, in general, I would agree with you if just Ukraine didn't want to fight the war and they didn't feel like their own call to defend their homeland and like their sense of national identity, which they have. So I guess that's what we disagree on. That's
not the point that we're making. That's not the point that I'm making, I should say. The point that I'm making is if the United States takes actions which you're cheering for, you're accepting that it likely happened. You're not saying, yeah, that probably didn't happen. Now, you're not saying definitive, I get that, but you're saying, tell me if this is fair. You're saying for the sake of argument, let's say it is true that the United States basically helped a color revolution that intentionally antagonized Russia. You're like, I don't know if that's true, but if it is, that's a good thing. Is that fair? That's what you're saying?
For the most part, yeah, in terms of the United States policy, this is a super rough bullet to swallow, or bullet to bite. There we go. I would say that, but that's probably how a lot of our foreign policy is done. But yeah.
Okay, well, what I'm saying is that the idea then that Ukraine, this is what's best for Ukraine is nonsense. That's not what's best for Ukraine. We led to that war occurring then. The provocations of Russia escalated the chances that Ukraine would be invaded, particularly when Ukraine was being used as a proxy for the United States. Right? And so, Russia...
No,
yes.
Because can you really say that just in general, that all of our actions from 2014 are what led to this?
No,
I don't know that.
I said I can't say that for certain.
Well, I wouldn't want to accept that premise.
I will accept this. Like, I try to look at things and not just with rose-colored glasses of always benefiting my own side. So I'll just put the shoe on the other foot. If the government of Canada has a color revolution and a pro-Chinese president is installed that's openly hostile to the United States, right? And then there are, you have to understand what's going on. There were other things going on. There were all sorts of accusations that people in Russia or people in Ukraine that were Russian-speaking, sympathetic to Russia, that they were being brutalized by Ukrainian government assets, the Tornado Battalion and others. And they wanted a return to a pro-Russian regime. And so Russia, who feels like they're being encircled, because you have that, then you have the bases or the attacks in Syria, etc.
Can I just cut him real quick? Just
Sure.
Because those people that you're talking about wanting to be part of Russia, that whole thing, just because of Russia's technique of moving people and deporting native Ukrainians en masse during the Soviet years, that whole thing's illegitimate. Because they've basically moved in, they've imported a whole fake Russian population over the last 60 to 70 years. Ukrainian people, the people who vote that way now do have Russian identity. That's because the Soviet Union mass engineered it.
Let's say that's true. Who cares?
But that matters to me, right? Because if it's a mandate on the land.
You just said there is no moral calculation here. You just said Russia's our enemy. We don't give a shit. We could exploit the people of Ukraine as pawns to be openly hostile to Russia if we think it benefits us. That's your position. And so if you're Russia is somehow immoral because from the time of the Soviet Union they displaced Russian citizens into Ukraine. Now, let's delve into this. I thought
we were asking about the moral equation from the Ukrainian side. So from an American looking into this, yeah, but from a Ukrainian looking into this, they probably wouldn't view those
so
people
I'm unaware of
legitimate.
what you're talking about. So let's get into the specifics of it. You're claiming that there are parts of Crimea, other places that have ethnic Russian people that are pro-Russia, but the reason is a nefarious plot by Russia to send ethnic Russians into Ukraine. Was this during the Soviet Union or after the breakup of the Soviet Union?
Yes.
Both.
Yeah. I don't know if it's both.
Wait, but that's really going to matter. Because if your argument is, when the Soviet Union was one big country, Russia moved people from their big country to other areas. Therefore, years later, when that country became free from the Soviet Union, became its own country, but a bunch of people that were formerly of the Soviet Union said, we want to go back to Russia. Fuck them, they don't deserve it, because when the Soviet Union was its own country, they moved people around. That doesn't seem to be any sort of moral claim. Now, if your claim is after the fall of the Soviet Union, then Russia interfered in the sovereignty of Ukraine by intentionally flooding parts of Ukraine with Russians. That's a different story. That's why I'm asking you for specifics.
You think just the fact that they were all one state makes that legitimate?
Why wouldn't
going forward in the future?
Why
well, I mean, because now we're looking at two people that had different national identities for, I'm sure, centuries.
So if the United States, so you're telling me,
that's how they're going to view it.
So you're telling me that if the United States decides to say hey, we're having famine problems in fucking, a drought hits New Mexico, and so we're going to buy a bunch of that land, government land, and the people that we've displaced from Mexico we're going to send to Nevada. You'd say then if something happens, those New Mexican, you would say, that was so shady. That was so shitty of the United States. Now we don't care what those former native New Mexicans think that are now in Nevada. Fuck them. Who gives a shit what they want because the government moved them? What sense does that make? So those people's feelings, so you're telling me that a bunch of, I assume you're saying that these Russians during the Soviet Union were victims. That's what you're saying. They were victims who were forced off of some land. So they weren't victims.
I actually legitimately don't know the circumstances of these Russian people that got moved into Ukraine. I just know that this occurred. I don't know if this was a government program or if these were prisoners. I don't know all the specifics.
But you understand then, if your defense of, well, who gives a fuck what these people think because they were moved there, then you're like,
not
well, I don't know.
Who gives a fuck what these people think.
Okay, sorry, real quick. Do you mind if I read this super chat? I promise I'll get right back to you. But
sure, yeah,
David,
ahead,
super
man.
chat,
Sure.
$10. I can't believe the path the left has chosen with the pro-war stuff. Remember the pushback they gave during Vietnam when the U.S. was trying to stop the USSR and the spread of communism. Yeah, I agree. But I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Is he talking about me? I'm not a leftist.
I don't think so. No, I would say not. You're not a leftist. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I hope so. Jeez. Okay. Go ahead. I think
the point it seemed to be, I said, hey, some of these Crimeans seem to be people that felt that they were Russian, that they had sympathies to Russia, and Russia felt they were being attacked through acts of terrorism by like sort of state actors. And you were like, yeah, but those people were moved there anyway. So I don't understand why you bring that up. It seems that you're bringing
that up in general. If we're talking about Russia's claim over eastern Ukraine, the whole thing is not going back. It's not actually reflecting national identity and anything legitimate of like what the Soviet Union did. It's literally it's artificial population movement for the sake of making something more Russian. I'm almost positive.
Okay, let's say that's true. Are those people victims or not? The Russians that are now in Ukraine, are they victims or not?
Victims of what?
Are they victims of being forcibly displaced? They lived somewhere in the Soviet Union. Soviet Union said, "Fuck that." We are aware that someday that Ukraine. Let me finish. It seems to be this is the rationale you're giving. There are these people in parts of the Soviet Union that we'll say is now Russia, right? But at that point, it was Soviet Union and Ukraine was Soviet. And Russia nefariously goes in there with their like fuzzy little hats and shit and says, "Comrade, we know someday Ukraine will separate from us. So we displaced you and your family and put in Ukraine. That way, when it separates, we have claim to bring Ukraine back." And so they send these people to Ukraine, and they say, he says, my sweet Ivanka, we must leave native farmland to go to Western Ukraine, where we be there as sleeper agents until such time as Ukraine separates from Soviet Union, and then we demand Russia take over part of Ukraine. That's your claim? Or are you saying they were like, oh shit, we're being displaced, this is terrible, this is horrific, but still felt an affinity for Russia even after that? It has to be one or the other, right? Either these were people that were victims, that were picked off their native land and sent to Ukraine.
And we could do the research right now if you want to pull it up on stream. I imagine that in like the Ukraine, as compared to a lot of portions of the Soviet Union, especially the Russian portions of the Soviet Union, being in the Ukraine would be a huge upgrade. That would probably be like owning land in the Ukraine would probably be like a reward.
So they're not victims. So they were sent there and they were
I don't know. I don't know. I just know that the demographic transfer took place. We can look it up. Like I said, it's been a long time to look this up.
But that's the fact. Like I suppose we could spend time looking at. You're the one. I'm struggling to figure out why this argument matters. Right.
Well,
let's say that it's one of three scenarios. One, that these were people that were forced out against their will, which means they're victims. In that scenario, okay, for whatever reason, now they're like, well, we still would rather be part of Russia. So why should we say, well, fuck them, who cares? Those people's voices should still matter. They were victims when they were moved out there, right? So it seems a little cold to say what their opinion doesn't matter. Or, number two, they were part of Russia's nefarious scheme to infiltrate Ukraine, which was part of the Soviet Union.
Can we back up, Rob? Just because I'm curious, because I know what I think in my head. Why do you think that, like, I brought that up and why it mattered to my point?
I would say the reason you brought that up was you wanted to make an excuse for why Russia's orc-like monsters that we don't give a shit what their claims are, and so we don't give a fuck if their claims were X, Y, and Z. We're going to dismiss them out of hand because they're evil motherfuckers that we should aggress against.
I would say it's a little more subtle than that. I would just say in general, we were talking before this about Russia having a legitimate claim to the east of Ukraine, and the claim in the east. Well, I'm pretty sure that's what kicked off that whole conversation.
No. I never said that. I said that that there are people.
Maybe I brought it up then.
Listen, just because there are people in eastern Ukraine that say we side more with Russia than Ukraine, I don't think that means Russia has a legitimate claim to Ukraine. Oh, okay. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there are reasons that I could see that Russia would say, well, fuck that, we're going to invade. That doesn't mean that they're without culpability. I completely disagree. I think that Russia is culpable for the invasion of Ukraine. My argument with you, or the discussion I'm having with you, is as follows. If you say, yeah, good, fuck Russia, we should aggress against them, and that aggression made it more likely that they invaded Ukraine, is that a moral thing to do, seeing as how it's the people of Ukraine that are suffering mightily because of it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I brought this up earlier. Now, asking it that way is asking me to defend the actions of a bunch of people who I'm just going to disagree with their geopolitical aims, mostly in the Obama administration. Now, there are a bunch of fuck-ups in general, but I think the idea of supporting Ukraine over Russia, even though a bunch of people in the Democratic Party fucked up, we now basically have to... I honestly think it's a better way. It's better to deal with it now and to just basically chip away and to fuck over Russia for minimal investment. Hopefully Trump will continue that.
Okay.
That was my whole original point.
Fair enough. There's other people in the call wait.
But
I want to ask you one more question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Just one more.
Sure.
Do you also agree that training the Mujahideen in the 70s was worth it because we basically gave Russia their own Vietnam and Afghanistan?
I mean, obviously, yeah, it's going to come back to bite us. But yeah, I mean, probably at the time, that was probably the right decision. We learned that lesson off Vietnam. Yeah, that was probably the right decision.
Do you like the Patriot Act?
No.
Do you like getting filled up when you go through an airport? Do you like the war on terror?
I know they're related. You're just asking me to buy bullets. I'll do it if you want me to.
The point I'm trying to make is, of course, things in the short term could seem worthwhile. Oh, we're getting out cheap. We're causing a quagmire for Russia and Ukraine. And so what if that means that a bunch of Ukrainians are suffering? Who gives a shit? Small price to pay.
That doesn't matter, though, Rob, if they choose to prosecute the war.
Sure it does. Sure it matters.
Because, I don't know, man, if this were on the opposite way and we were all hanging out when you were Ukrainians and there were other people being like, no, we should end the war, and we were all fucking pissed off and we wanted to fight Russia, I would say that's fucked up for somebody else to withdraw support for us based on that. If we intentionally
created the situation where Ukraine would have been invaded, and then the Ukrainian people... By the way, it's not as universal as you suggest. You acknowledge that there are many Ukrainian males trying to flee the country, right? That are being conscripted back. Right, so it's not as universal as you would have believed. But let's say for the sake of argument that it's 80 to 85% of the people that want to fight. I'll accept that for the sake of argument. Fuck, maybe even 90%. I don't know. Let's say that's true. Nonetheless, that doesn't mean that setting up the conditions where they would have to fight is morally worth it. For example, I could say, for example, let's say, this is a shitty example, you might laugh at this example and call me an asshole, that's fine. But let's say I'm with you, let's take a random person in the chat, Spinfoil in the chat there, right? I'll assume for the sake of this, that I'll assume that he's a man, right? So Spinfoil, let's say me and you are you know what we want to do? We want to fuck Spinfoil over. He works at our company, we want to fuck him over. And we know he's a proud man, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to set up the situation where you sleep with his wife. How about that? And then I'm going to support him in going to the gym to kick your ass. And we'll say, well, it's a moral thing to do because he wants to fight. He wants to fight you now. So it's not immoral of us to set up the situation where he would want to fight you because now he wants to fight. You see the problem with that?
Well, I would say that's much more accurate if the person that he wants to fight is an asshole that fucking everybody hates.
But aren't you an asshole that everyone hates?
No, I don't think America's that bad. There's no way you feel that too, Rob.
Well, no, that's what you're saying about Russia.
Yeah, Russia is that bad. America's not that bad.
Right. So what I'm saying is, it doesn't change.
I know you got people waiting.
Yeah, it doesn't change the situation if you're a scumbag that everyone hates, and now that makes it morally justified to have you sleep with his wife so that he would then be pissed enough to fight you. No. That doesn't justify just because you're in this hypothetical. I'm not saying this in real life. I don't know you. But in this hypothetical, if you're a scumbag, similarly, it doesn't matter if everyone hates Russia. And by the way, I don't agree with your oversimplification of this. But I'm saying even if we accept that, it still doesn't make it. If we intentionally set up the situation to cause Russia to invade Ukraine, and we say, but it's okay because Ukraine wants to fight now, that's still fucked up. I don't think the fact that they now want to fight makes it morally justified for us to... Now, there's tons of good arguments you could make to, but that's not what happened. Did the United States set that situation? Those are different arguments, but you're arguing from the hypothetical that even if that is what occurred... That. Right, that's what
neither one of us know enough about 2014. I'll look it up, and we can have another conversation in the future, brother.
That's fine. Yeah. But what I'm saying is that you have to start from sort of what your moral and philosophical position is before you get into, what would you justify? right? And I'm saying, even if that's not what occurred, it seems that you're saying, yeah, fuck them, fuck Russia, they're bad guys. If we're poking the bear, so be it. And if that means that they invade Ukraine and Ukraine's like, sure, we're game to fight, and then that causes a quagmire from Russia, which loses their strength in the region, great. It's all good. It's all morally justified. I say no.
You know what, Rob? I know you got shit in the chat, but I got to ask you because we never did the reverse of this. Mm-hmm. What if, just in general, we didn't provoke 2014? Mm-hmm. What if we didn't provoke 2014? Do you feel any different about our reaction if Russia was the one who forced 2014 and we were in the right?
No,
and there
we should still, for the reasons I said when you first asked, I think because the United States are immoral actors that are actually running the show, and because there's so many problems back home, no, we should still not be involved. It'll end up worse. The way this will end at the end, I'll make you a bet. Maybe I'll be wrong. Looks like Ukraine's doing good this week, right?
I got my notepad out.
Okay, I won't bet money or anything, but I'll bet just for pride. Yeah, we'll bet for pride. I'll bet eventually. Timeline. It's not part of my bet. I'll bet when this all shakes down that at the end of the day, Ukraine's worse off than when it began. And I'll bet that the United States lets them high and dry, just like Afghanistan, and the people of Ukraine are going to go, what the fuck just happened to us? That's how it ends. Same way as Afghanistan. Same way. And so all of the moral posturing, thank you so much, Admiral Gibbs, for the sub. All the moral posturing, we need to do the right thing and help the people of Ukraine and blah, 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 blah. It won't matter. They're going to suffer at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, there'll be some sort of resolution that's peaceful that would have been very similar to a resolution that could have occurred 2 years ago. And that our propaganda media will say, this is a huge victory for Ukraine. Yay! But it won't be. It'll be the same old shit. It'll just been 2 to how many years? 5, 10 years of needless suffering that enriched a bunch of people that are connected to sort of the establishment in the United States and the Western world and NATO. They're going to get rich. The only people that'll suffer are the people of Ukraine, the people of Russia, and it'll be the average people around the world in these countries like Germans that have to pay more for fossil fuels because Ukraine bombed a pipeline in an act of environmental terrorism that was probably sponsored by the CIA. I digress. And it'll be the people in the United States that suffer as their government gives more shits about people around the world and enriching their allies than they do about the people that are struggling back home. That's my position of how it'll end. Maybe your position is how it'll end is, no, noble victory for the great Ukrainians because we help them beat back the dastardly Russian hordes that then lose huge amounts of influence in the region.
I think it'd be a little bit better than that, but I know you got a full waiting room, brother. So,
all right. I appreciate the call. Man. I do. I appreciate the call.
I'll come back, man. But yeah,
all right. Yeah. Thanks, man. Take it easy.
All right, take care, buddy.
All right. I don't know the order people came in. Let's go one at a time. Ditso, full panel here. What's going on? Ditso, can you hear me? Ditso's mic's on mute. We'll give him 1 second, and then I'll bring someone whose mic's not on mute. If you're
I'm here.
Oh, okay. What's up, Ditso?
Pura vida. Hello, Rob. How you doing?
Doing good. Now, I don't want to be rude, but there are a bunch of people in the waiting room, so...
no. Another day we can have a long conversation.
Yeah, sure.
I'm just coming in. The prior conversation lacked a lot of... because the Ukrainian situation, I was on the background eating my nails because there were conversations like, for example, the Budapest Memorandum, the Partition Treaty on the Status and Conditions of the Black Sea Fleet on 97, Budapest Memorandum 94. Both were, and also the Treaty on Friendship 97 between Russian and Ukrainian. All these three major treaties between Ukraine and Russia did establish the control of Ukraine over the Crimea situation. And it's a whole bunch of stuff because then one would have to ask what happened between the end of the USSR and the 2014 or 2014, a whole other conversation. But just wanted to point that out, those three major facts.
So the Budapest Memorandum, I'm sort of tangentially aware of, but I can't claim to be an expert in any of this. You have to understand, I don't claim to be an expert in foreign policy. My default is to say that we should stay out of as many situations as possible. Can I be convinced that there is a specific situation that perhaps we should be involved with? Yeah. But as someone who, this isn't my area of expertise and I sort of have limited time and interest in what I'm looking into, it's difficult for me to go through a lengthy history of Ukraine, Russia, or for that matter, a place like Israel, Palestine. I understand there are passionate people on all sides of these issues that are convinced that their side's right. But I haven't gone through that. Instead, I take a lazier, but I think principled view of this, which is the United States just shouldn't be involved. We shouldn't be involved.
Let me give you a perspective. You don't know me. I'm not in the United States, but I'm in Central America. I'm 43 years old. I've been working the last 25 years of my life, if not longer, in matters of politics. My specialty is foreign policy, as well as political analysis, sociology, and well, I'm also graduated as a lawyer in Costa Rica, but I also know and handle a lot of the laws here in the Western Hemisphere, etc. But one of my main aspects is that international law, the application of international law. That's what I've been working for the past 25 years. One of the major subjects I handle is the drug policy reform. Just 3 years ago, I was able to get medicinal cannabis legalized in Costa Rica after a 13-year process, which was harsh and difficult, but we got that first step done. So yeah, I work on this type of thing daily, and in the matters of Russia, Ukraine, I'm pretty versed on it.
Well, just give me like 30 seconds. Should the United States be involved? Should we be helping Ukraine beat Russia? Or do you think the United States went too far and that helped provoke Russia into this?
No. Okay, simple thing. As a Latin American, I know very well that when the United States digs its dirty toes in the issues that do not concern them, they make them worse. That's undoubtedly. But in the situation of Ukraine and Russia, there are clear and concise historical as well as social details that need to be put forward. With or without United States involvement, Russia would have done exactly what it had done and it has done today. Funny thing is, the counter invasion of Ukraine now to the Kursk region has shifted a lot of what's happening in the last few years there. So in that sense, I could tell you that regardless of the position of United States, the conflict was an ethnical, political one that had been brewing for a long time, but most precisely fall of USSR, the next 20 years, then it boiled again, and that's what we saw on 2014. The revoiling of that conflict between Ukraine and the Russian, and well, today Russian Federation, ex-USSR.
Okay, I don't know that I believe that. It is a perspective. It could be true. It doesn't really answer the question of what the United States should be doing in this situation. I don't think that we should be involved, just like there will be ethnic battles between Israel and Palestine that we should not be involved in. But I appreciate...
The problem,
go ahead.
Yeah, just to give you a quick perspective. The problem with that is that you did... United States, France, UK, and Russia did the Budapest Memorandum, which is an international treaty binding in all these countries. So, not assisting Ukraine, it tells the rest of the world we cannot trust the United States when they do treaties. And if we cannot trust the United States when they do treaties, the hell are we doing treaties with the United States for? And
that's fine. That's great. I don't mind if the rest of the world thinks that. That's absolutely fine. The United States picks and chooses all the time. For example, the United States signed, international law. So you'd be aware of the START Treaty, the Strategic Arms Nuclear Reduction Treaty. You would be aware of the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, the CTBT. Yeah. So the CTBT was actually crafted by the United States, I believe written in 92. We then refused to sign it. We have enforced upon other nations these international laws that say they don't have the right to test nuclear weapons while we do it ourselves. In this Russia-Ukraine situation, there's been situations where we have taken Russian diplomats or people that aren't even diplomats, just people that are Russian nationals, and seized their assets, which sends the signal to the rest of the world. Why should we do business with the United States when they're able to just illegally seize assets in this manner? So I'm unpersuaded by that argument. I'm also aware of the fact that there is, real quick, I'm also aware that there are people that counter what you're saying, claiming, I believe the Budapest Memorandum, that actually the United States and Ukraine also broke that around 2014 2014 with things that they did. I'm not sure that that's true, but I've heard those claims. So I'm just saying there is a counter perspective to sort of you just saying, nope, this is the way it is. We have to be involved. Russia was always going to get involved in this ethnic battle. And if we don't get involved in this ethnic battle, then the rest of the world will say the United States is weak and won't commit to their treaties. We could see real quick, we could see just here, the United States, for example, said that we would back our allies in places like Afghanistan. We left thousands upon thousands, tens of thousands of allies in the arms of the Taliban as we fled with our tail between the legs in Afghanistan. So in the world's, like in debate community, we would call what you're saying as non-unique. I am unpersuaded that your argument that we have to be involved in this war, potentially leading to World War III, is necessary because of some treaty when the United States regularly violates treaties and international norms, and it would have triggered the very same concerns that you're talking about.
So, two things. One, when talking about international treaties, the aspect of signing an international treaty is not as important as the constitutional process of ratifying it that then makes that treaty binding, a binding law. There's a difference between signing something and ratifying something. Through the constitutional means, and especially in the last 200 and 248 years, on the constitutional liberal type of things that we have here in the Western Hemisphere and in other countries that have established this means, the only way a treaty becomes a law within those countries that are signing it is through the legislative ratification. In the example of your Constitution, Article 2, Section 2 of your Constitution establishes that process and how that becomes. One example of this would be the war on drugs. How the war on drugs in the last 60 years have become a binding agreement throughout 185 nations, and how that war on drugs through the United Nations via the pressure of the United States became a norm and a one policy fits all that has failed completely.
I'm just unpersuaded by the differentiation of when we specifically sign a treaty. Again, there are international norms that we break all the time and promises. I don't think that the actual signing of a treaty. But let's see if I can convince you. Was Nord Stream partially owned by Germany?
Yes.
Okay.
If I'm not incorrect.
And do we now
yes.
know? And does the NATO treaty say that an attack on one of our country has to be met with the countries coming to collective? What's the article that it triggers? You know what I'm talking about. Is an international law expert, correct? Article 4, is that what it is?
Article 5.
Article 5.
Of
okay,
the,
so now that
NATO,
it's came out definitively that it was Ukraine that bombed and property of Germany, we're now through Article 5 treaty bound to attack Ukraine, correct?
Not necessarily.
Why? Isn't that the treaty is very serious? The treaty.
Yes,
they illegally they committed an act of environmental terrorism against the nation of Germany.
However, this point of what happened with the Nord Stream in itself and the attack towards it, for example, Germany is already seeking arrest of Ukrainian those they identified as the initial attackers. However, they also took this opportunity to take out Germany of the dependence of gas lines coming out of Russia, because they were heavily dependent on it. About 25-30% of the gas.
Now, all of that's irrelevant. All of that's still going to trigger the criticism you had, which was, no, we need to, treaties are so important that we must adhere to the letter of the law of the treaties, even if it means going to war with a nation like Russia that could lead to World War III. Because the problem is, if we don't honor the treaty, it sends the signal to the rest of the world we won't honor the treaty. So your argument of, well, technically, yes, Article 5 was triggered, but Germany was already trying to shift from getting so much gas from Russia. That's not really going to help. It doesn't matter what Germany's future plans were with what they were going to do with their oil industry. What matters is this was a terroristic attack on a NATO ally, which means that we are duty bound by the treaty in Article 5 to respond. Correct?
If Germany then said, that attack was Ukrainian and there was a unwarranted attack. But this is the thing about, and let me say it this way. Rob, I agree with you that United States has the worst track on respecting their agreements internationally, and that they pick and choose how they behave in regards of the international community. There's no doubt in that. In the matters of the NATO, and I know this because I have those channels in there. Germany said, okay, Ukrainian citizens may have blown up Nord Stream. We don't give a fuck. Because if Russia comes in closer on that moment, we'd rather turn our heads on this one. Yeah, we're going to arrest the motherfuckers, whatever. But we're not going to invoke Article 5 of the NATO treaty. What we're going to do is we're going to wait to see what fucking Russia's going to do. And they were right about waiting on that one. Because then Russia, in the 4 or 5 years after the Nord Stream situation happened, boom, what they do, invaded Ukraine.
I appreciate your perspective. We'll get to other people. Thank you so much for calling in.
Sure.
Unpersuaded by what you're saying, though. I'm against World War III. I'm happy that you're for
I'm against
to honor.
it too.
No, you're not.
No,
because then what should we? Okay, real quick, we'll go through this. So then, based on the Budapest Memorandum, what was the United States then treaty obligated to do because Russia violated it?
As the Budapest Memorandum establishes, that it's the security assurances, and one of those things that established was that the territorial aspect of Ukraine that was
right. So
moment,
the memorandum said what
92.
Ukraine. Right. Let's just break it down easy for the audience. It said what the borders of Ukraine were the borders, and Ukraine couldn't expand, and Russia couldn't invade. Right. Got all that. We're now moving past that. You say yes, Russia violated that, and so the United States was treaty bound to. Go ahead.
Assist.
What's assist mean?
Assist means financial. The most you could have done at that moment is a grade of financial assistance and intelligence and everything but putting boots on the ground.
So wait, I just want to be clear that treaty said, or that memorandum said, the United States has to assist financially. It has to assist with intelligence, but not put boots on the ground. That's what the memorandum said.
Not the memorandum itself.
But that's. I'm not trying to nitpick. I'm not trying to nitpick. But your justification for the United States being involved is we have to follow the letter of the law to the T in the memorandum. Correct? That's your argument. Because if we don't, it sends the signal to the rest of the world that we're unwilling to follow through with treaties that we signed. So I'm not trying to be an asshole. Literally, your entire argument is we have to follow the letter of the law. Correct? Of this memorandum. So what was the letter of the law? What did it say? Did it just say, in general, we had to assist?
It had to assist. It was a security.
Okay, so then we send them $1 million, and that's it. Now we assisted. Now we could stop being involved. We've already assisted. That fulfills our obligations under the Budapest Memorandum. So now we could pull back. Correct?
Well, it would be nice to try to pull out, but right at this stage, unless Russia surrenders and says, okay, we fucked up, we back out, unless there is a surrender of Russia, this is going to still going on. Dude,
right. So I'm
not in favor or against it.
But again, it seems like, as an international law expert, it seems that you're making some good points. I don't disagree that you know more about this than me, until it gets to what the United States is obligated to do. And then it doesn't seem like there's a lot of specifics. It seems very vague. You're like, well, assist. It just says assist. And it's like, okay, well, what does assist mean? Does that mean send money? Does that mean we have to go to war? Does that mean we have to send intelligence? Does that mean it has to be ongoing? Does that mean it could be one lump sum? Does that mean we could just send 10 troops and that qualifies as assistance? Because your argument is the reason we have to be involved is we have to follow the letter of that treaty. We have to follow it. So again, having said that, my question is, how far does that obligation go? What does that memorandum say the United States has to do? If it just says assist, then I say, fine, we send Zelensky $1 million and say, we assisted, we fulfilled our obligation under the Budapest Memorandum, therefore the rest of the world can see, just like we didn't go through with attacking Ukraine because they attacked Germany, a German country, or a German property, we've followed through enough that you could accept that we'll honor our treaties. Do you have anything more to say on the specifics? What does the memorandum? How long is this memorandum?
16 pages. I'm putting in it right now on the on the chat.
So get to the part of where it says the United States is obligated to do if either party violates the memorandum.
Okay, so several points. Point 4 of the memorandum, and I quote: "The Russian Federation of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland and the United States of America reaffirm their commitment to seek immediate United Nations Security Council action to provide assistance to Ukraine as a non-nuclear weapon state party to the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons if Ukraine should become a victim of an act of aggression or an object of a threat of an aggression in which nuclear weapons are used." That is in the specific sense of if the use of nuclear weapons happen. Now, hold on. Shoot.
Okay, so that's not going to... So far we don't have any obligation because no nuclear weapons were used. Got it.
Okay, so that
did you link it? Where'd you link it? In Discord?
No, I in the chat of YouTube, sorry. Let me link it on the...
You could link it in the chat of... I'll get to the super chats, I'm sorry. You linked it in the chat of YouTube?
Yeah, YouTube, and I'm putting it right now on it. Give me a second. Where can I put it on the Discord?
You just put it in the general section.
General section. Give me a second.
No problem. No, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Hold on. General. Here we go. It is socials, announcements. I don't have.
But I am going to have to let you go. You could link it and we'll look at it later, I guess. The point I just want to make, can you get to the point real quick? Do you know where the point is where it says if there's a invasion without nuclear weapons, what the United States obligation is?
Second. Let me change on it. Here we go. All right. It's point... Yeah. Oh, that's in Russian. I need the English one. Sorry, I had it in Russian Federation. Here we go. In point 1, it also tells us that the Russian Federation, United Kingdom, United States, yada yada yada, France, in accordance with the principles of the CSC Final Act, to respect the independence and sovereignty and the existing borders of Ukraine. And point 4, well, tells us that point of if nuclear weapons are used. Here we go. Point 3 also tells us to refrain from economic coercion designed to subordinate to their own interest the exercise by Ukraine of the rights inherent in its sovereignty and thus secure advantages of any kind. So all these points, what are telling us is that the agreement tells Russia, don't fuck with Ukraine. If you do, and if you use nuclear weapons, we'll assist. However, the condition of nuclear weapons is on the extreme. And if there is any other form of fucking up around Ukraine, we will also assist. So
I don't think it says that. I'm going to have to read through this. I think you're adding. You're right. So let me tell you why. Because it's difficult to follow without being able to read. It's difficult just with someone saying. But here's why I'm skeptical of this. Because if it says this, if at point 1 it says, if you try to, I heard you read about economic coercion there, right? Right, that was something that you read. So let's say that it says, if Russia economically coerces Ukraine, the United States will assist. If Russia nukes Ukraine, the United States would assist. That makes the second part superfluous. So in other words, if earlier in these articles it says, if Russia invades with conventional weapons, the United States needs to assist. Why would you be repetitive to say, and also, if they go further and invade with nuclear weapons, the United States should also assist? It doesn't seem like that's how people write things. It seems like one of two things would be true. One, it doesn't mention that sort of assistance that it's talking about with the nuclear attack, and you're just kind of implying that. Or second, it's varying the levels of assistance based on the varying levels of attack. So there's one amount of assistance that's necessary. If there's coercion, there's another amount of assistance that's necessary. If there's a conventional attack, there's a third amount of assistance necessary if there's a nuclear attack. But that still wouldn't be what you're saying, that, oh, it's just the same, it's just assistance. And any of those, it doesn't seem like it's very thorough in defining what that assistance will be. And I also heavily suspect, without reading it, I'm just trying to listen to you and hear, it sounds like it's saying that Ukraine should be free of coercion and their sovereignty should be appreciated, not just from Russia, correct? Isn't that saying sort of universally? Which would also seem to be that the United States would have violated that memorandum if it's true that we had NGOs in there helping with the color revolution in 2014. Nonetheless, here's another question I have. When was this memorandum signed?
92.
Okay. Has Russia violated
94.
it? Has Russia violated it previously to 2014?
Yes.
Did the United States assist Ukraine at those times?
It was taken to the ICJ.
Did the United States assist?
On that moment, not necessarily.
Okay,
Ukraine
so then if
didn't
your
ask for that
argument is,
assistance.
so if your argument is,
Ukraine took the course of attempted diplomatic resolution as well as through the ICJ, saying, okay, look, this particular conflict of violation, it goes to the, you know what the ICJ is, right?
International Criminal, or the International Court of, I forget what exactly.
Justice.
I am aware, yes. I vaguely know what it is, but yeah.
Yeah. So, just to make that distinction, the ICC is the International Criminal Court.
Yes.
And the ICJ is the International Court of Justice.
Okay.
One thing deals with the crimes of war. That's the ICC. ICJ deals with the conflicts of treaties like this, or the territorial conflicts or economic conflicts, etc. Nothing to do with war, but all that could develop into war in that sense.
Okay, so then I'll just say again, it seems what you're saying. You're in a difficult position because you're saying that the reason that the United States needs to be involved is because we need to send a signal to the rest of the world that we're honor bound by treaties. If your argument is, but when this memorandum was violated in the past, the United States didn't get involved and didn't have assistance, and instead Ukraine took other measures. Cool, they could have taken those other measures if the United States didn't get involved. Problem solved. If the world didn't if the world didn't say, oh, we no longer trust the United States in 96 or in 98 or in 2000 when the memorandum was violated by Russia and the United States didn't assist, I see no reason why this time they'd say, this is it. This is the final straw. Particularly after we've seen more heinous actions by the United States, such as the invasion of sovereignty in places like Libya, Iraq, and other places. So I do thank you for calling. I'll give you the last word on it. But
yeah, no, just to make clear, I'm not in favor of World War III. Let's make that very clear.
Well, few people are, but that's clear that that's the predictable outcome of we always have to follow this treaty, and as long as the war is going on, we have to continue to assist, because the logical extension of that is, well, if the assistance isn't keeping Ukraine afloat, then the assistance needs to increase. So if Russia gets to the point where they're almost ready to take over Ukraine, then the level of assistance would have to increase to the point where we prevented that, which would inevitably lead to a direct conflict, which would be World War III. You might not be in favor of it, but that's,
Just as a conclusion, the issue with international law and ratification and then its binding characteristic is that as a contractual law in the major sense of it, the parts can then invoke or not invoke when it's relevant to its needs in that matter. In the situation of Ukraine and Russia, it took it to that extreme where then it forced that that necessary assistance as agreed upon by the Budapest to become a reality. On the prior situations where there had been violations, Ukraine, as its sovereignty, decided, well, we we are not there yet to invoke the Budapest in that sense. We can try to resolve this through the means of the international courts and try to go through the diplomatic channels. So that is one point, and an interesting aspect that and this reminds me of my class. And just with this, I conclude. A professor once told me that the contractual behavior between countries is also subjected to the sovereignty of those countries and to the capability of those countries deciding when to and when not to invoke, because sometimes when you invoke, you can create worsening conditions by forcing the other part to then become involved. So there is a grade of leniency in regards of how that sovereignty decides when to invoke the obligations of that international treaty, aka the contractual sense. So that clearing up, what I was just exposing is that your country made an agreement alongside UK, also Russia, as well as France. At the moment the USSR broke, because that
Hey man, you got to wrap it up, bud. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I know it's a long thing, but
I got it. I'd sum your point up in 30 seconds. Well, those previous times they chose not to invoke. Now Ukraine is invoking, so now we're honored by that treaty because you signed it. Good?
Because you ratified it.
Okay, thanks so much. I really appreciate do you have something more to... I mean, this is getting quite lengthy for a closing statement. I thought I summarized your closing statement in 10 seconds there, and you were kind of going for 4 minutes.
You did well.
Thank you.
Just have a great night.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for calling in. So, couldn't disagree more with the caller. My feelings is that may him and people that think that treaty should be honored go there and fight. I'm against World War III. The people of Ukraine will be left poorer because instead of trying to have a peaceful resolution, we've decided to encourage them to be cannon fodder to fight Russia so that they, like the first caller said, so that it could diminish Russia in some way. I don't know the order that people came in. We'll go to Emmett next. But I would like to be done, hopefully, by midnight. So I'm not trying. I know that came across as a little rude there with Ditso, but we got to move it along a little. So feel free to call back in. What's up, Emmett?
Hello, Rob.
Hey.
Just as a thing, Scott was here the longest, so if you want to bring him on.
Okay, if you don't mind, that's very nice. I didn't notice, but I'll bring you back on. I promise before I leave. Scott, we'll bring you on. Scott, before you start here, let me see if I could real quick see some of the super chats I missed. I think it's important to try to read every super chat that comes through. So let me do my best to do that. 1 second here. Can you hear me though, Scott? Important to try to read every. Let's see. It takes a moment for the chat to load up. Scott, can you hear me? Scott. Okay, we'll bring Emmett back on if Scott. Super chats I missed. David for $10 says, I can't believe we already read that, but thank you, David. Bandit says, if you're worried about Ukraine, it would be kept quiet for $2. Thank you. Gasai Ray Lane for $5 says, hello, Rob. Saw your clips of Destiny debate on the news streamer I watch. Been watching some of your older stuff. Good content. Have a great night. Thank you, Gasai. If you left, I apologize for not getting to that on time, but I appreciate it. I will get to all the super chats, so thank you so much. Scott, can you hear me? If not, we'll bring Emmett back on. We'll try you again here in a bit, Scott. All right. We know Emmett's here. And very generous. Emmett, you remind me of me today. Yesterday, I went into a gas station and a gentleman held the door for me. And then when we got in line, I said, would you like to go in front of me? And he's like, no, I insist. But I think that's important. If someone holds the door for you, you gotta offer to leave them go first in line. And I thought that was very reminiscent of what you did, saying that someone was in the queue before you. So thank you so much, Emmett. But Scott's AFK right now, so what you got?
Well, I don't really care about the Russia-Ukraine. I think
me
I
too.
agree with you. I mostly agree with you on that. I think it was kind of a fuck around, find out in both
It's
both ways.
I would say one of the things I'd say to Ditzo as well. It's also selective. Like the United States violates treaties all the time. It violates country sovereignty all the time. It's selective in how it's applied, and the reason is, like I was telling the first caller, because it's not that we have the people of Ukraine's best wishes at heart. Our intel agencies don't give a shit about them. It's a power play to see how they can entrench their power, and as soon as the people of Ukraine become irrelevant to that, they're going to leave them high and dry, like they did the people of Libya, like they did the people of Afghanistan. So sorry to interrupt you. Yeah.
We're not bound by international law by the simple issue that we are the strongest. Well, United States is the strongest military. So
correct.
It doesn't matter what are they going to do, like invade us.
Right, exactly. What's the enforcement mechanism? And if the argument is, like, again, the problem is when you start talking about sort of our global position, well, violating treaties sort of diminishes in your global role. Well, that could be true, but there's a lot of things that do that, right? Like invading Iraq probably would have done that. Or, World Trade Organization disputes and things. There might be people that say that our financing of Israel diminishes us in many eyes of the world, et cetera, et cetera. So this is all subjective, and it's not just the United States that plays fast and loose with these international treaties. It's sort of every country that does it. For example, we had an awful lot of treaties that we broke with Native Americans. Is the rest of the world no longer willing to deal with the United States because of that? So, I don't know. I don't think it's a good reason to be like, well, we were pissing around in the region for who knows how long, but, now we have to escalate. Now we got to keep this war go. And isn't it convenient? It's exactly what the institutionalists want. Let's just keep this war going for another 5 to 10 years so we can keep funneling money. Yeah, I'm against it. I'm a simple man though. I think that we should be worried about problems back home. So.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't care about it much. So, I sent you a message, and I just want to talk. It's going to be really easy. I think I have a very different understanding of the idea of deplatforming and how is it that it's enforced differently between the left and the right, and how is it that we have a different perspective as well in the left and the right. So for example, I would agree with you that I don't want Destiny to be the platform, but I would 100% want him to be completely demonetized. Mm-hmm. And I think he would say exactly the same thing. Well, no, he would say, I want them to be completely gone and banned forever, because that's what they would do. But he wouldn't have any problem of having any conservative being completely demonetized.
That's probably true. So to give my position on the demonetization thing, I could not want someone demonetized, but also understand that it's logical to do so. For example, personally, I don't give a shit if someone wants to come on and scream the N-word. Now, you might say, is that because you secretly are yelling the N-word all the time? No, not really. Have I said the N-word? Sure. Have I told edgy jokes and shit? Sure. But I'm not racist. It's not a word that I throw around almost ever. It's probably been years and years and years. And even so, I'm not saying this out of a position of, I'm trying to protect my own ass. I think I would be fine with it. If people want to come on and, on YouTube and they want to shout that word, cool, right? But I also understand that YouTube's a business and they have to make money. And it's not, advertisers don't want their ads to be on with someone that's yelling racial slurs. I get that. So I might say, I'll give you an example specifically. Do you know the channel Politically Provoked? I don't know if you're aware of them.
Not really.
It was this channel that was like, it was sort of like modern day debate, except trashier. Like, so it had like people connected to Nick Fuentes that would be on the show all the time. And there was a lot of racial slurs that went there. Now, having said that, I debated on that platform. I've debated Destiny at one point in that platform. It went very well. I didn't mind being on the platform. So inevitably, that platform got banned from YouTube. And I was like, let's, for the sake of argument, say they didn't get banned. They just got demonetized for the sake of this point. I wouldn't be for that. I'm like, it's a shame. But I understand it. It's like, well, what'd you expect? You got people on every other day shouting the N-word. What did you think was going to happen? Right? Like, so I don't want Destiny demonetized necessarily just because I don't give a shit. And I actually, I understand your point. I really do. I just don't think it's that big of a deal. But let me go further and say what I really want is I want Destiny to not only not be banned, I want his message to get out to as many people as possible. I hope that every independent that wants to vote sees the vile, disgusting shit that he's saying. I don't know
Yeah.
if you saw my channel last night, but I was I was talking to a Destiny fan, and he came right out with it. Yeah, I wish that bullet would have killed Trump. Good. Not good that you think that, terrible that you think it, but good that we could hear what you're thinking. Better that we know. That's fine.
Yeah.
Vote accordingly. So, the idea of demonetizing, it on its own, I agree with you. I don't much give a shit. And I understand that that's different than banning someone. And these are businesses and they're trying to make money. I get that. And so part of that on X where he got demonetized, you could correct me if I'm wrong. The way X monetizes, though, is like, you're a member or whatever, you pay for the service, and then they basically are putting ads on X, and so you're based on clicks, get so much money per click or whatever because there are ads running. That's where X is getting that money to pay you. Those ads aren't going to want to be ran next to someone that's saying, I'm glad that this firefighter died. I get it. It's not something I'm cheering for, but I get it. And you're absolutely right that Destiny has said in the past that all alternative media conspiracy theories like me should be banned. He said that in the past. Now, he has stuck up for me in individual situations where I had a video removed that I was a debate with him and Connor and Destiny's videos were allowed to remain on YouTube, and mine got a community guideline strike. Literally the exact same content. But me, the right-winger, I get struck. He did stick up for me in that one situation. But I think your overall point is correct, that at the end of the day, they don't give a shit about these standards. They would rely on censorship and what have. But it's not how I reciprocate.
Well, my point is that this is this is their standards that they set.
That's true.
So they made every single one of the, if you do anything 10 years ago that can be conscripted as any kind of legal violence, we're going to go ahead and get you out of whatever business you are in. And then if you have a channel and you're right-winger, and they've been pushing towards that same thing to be done with the monetization. At least I believe in YouTube it's done that way. Like if you post anything in Twitter or X, and that is considered to be hate speech, they can go ahead and demonetize you completely.
Yeah, certainly. I've even heard of people saying things at political rallies that weren't even streamed, that someone else filmed and then put on a different platform, getting people demonetized or banned on YouTube. You could take this even to a crazier extent, immediately following that assassination attempt. Do you remember that there was this viral story of this old woman that worked at Home Depot? Did you remember hearing this story?
Yeah, I'm going to say something a little bit controversial, but I thought it was completely justified in a sense. Not in my sense, and as in what I would like to happen. In my case, it would be they can say whatever the hell they want, and that would be it. But according to their own standards, I think that's completely fair game.
And what I said, I don't disagree. My take's similar, but what I said was, I'm not going to do that. I'm never going to pick up the phone and call the corporation and say, this person should be fired. I'm not going to go to their place of work and confront them and say, you should be fired. And I don't really want them fired. But at this point, based on the standards that have been set by the people in power on the left, hey man, why shouldn't they be held to their own standards? So even though I'm not going to do it, and in my heart I wish that it wasn't happening, I'm not going to speak up much. Hey, sorry, I tried to warn you. I warned you when it was us being targeted all the time. And I feel the same way with who knows what the future will hold. Maybe think of this future. Say some of these people I debate, say Trump wins and they go to a rally and there's all these accusations that Trump's team cheated, that there's fraud in deep red areas, whatever, right? And say they go to a rally and they're pissed off, but they're not there with the intent to commit violence. But all of a sudden, some people engage in violence. And then Trump's team comes into office and they're like, that was a terrorist event. It was an insurrection. We're now going to have sedition hunters. We're going to go after every single person that was there. Everyone. We're going to turn their life upside down. And then many of these streamers that I debate with, what if they get caught up in that? I would feel bad for them. Even the ones that I don't particularly like, I would feel bad for. But what am I expected to do? Because they would have thrown my ass in prison in a heartbeat if I was there January 6th and the government accused me of wrongdoing. And I could prove it. There was this guy named Suspect Sushi that was a right-wing streamer. I don't know how often he streamed, but I was aware of him. I did panels with him. He had a sort of friendly relationship with left-wing streamer Dylan Burns. He had messaged Dylan the day before January 6th and said, Basically, I don't remember exactly what it said, but the implication was Antifa they thought was going to show up. And so Suspect Sushi was like, hey, man, shit might kick off. You shouldn't be there. Meaning violent lefties, as always, would come attack the right-wing protesters. After January 6th, Dylan Burns sent that information to law enforcement and then did a stream about it. And Suspect Sushi spent a year in jail. That shit happened. That's real. Yep. That happened. You know? And then I'm supposed to go on like Dylan Burns' show and be like, hey, what's up, buddy? How you been? You know what I mean? Now, maybe Suspect Sushi, I will be honest with this, maybe he did commit some heinous act that I'm unaware of. Obviously, I'm getting his side of the story. But I'd be damned if I would, someone that felt close enough to me to say, hey, I'm worried about you tomorrow. Please don't go. If I'm then sending those DMs to law enforcement, you know, in an attempt to get them arrested. I think that's crazy. I think it's shit. That's what I think. And I think there's a lot of lefties that would do that. And they'll say right now, but Rob, you didn't do anything crazy, so we wouldn't be sure for you getting locked up. Yeah, until the government accuses me. Then that benefit of the doubt will go out the window right out of the gate. Yeah, sounds right. Lock them up. And so what, I'm supposed to, out of principle, if the same occurs to them? And it matriculates down, right? If a Trump administration, if Trump wins and he ends up using the FBI to get FISA warrants on Democrats, am I supposed to go, oh my God, this is terrible, when I watch the Democrats cheer for that? Was I supposed to freak out with January 6th when I watched Democrats make excuses for violent left-wing riots all fucking summer in 2020? I'm supposed to freak out all of a sudden January 6th? At what point do I say, like, why am I always holding myself to my standard, but my standard never applies to anyone else? I don't have any power. They do whatever the fuck they want. They get away with shit with impunity. And so as soon as the same standards that they wish upon you is infiltrated to them, as soon as that happens, what do they start saying? I thought you were for free speech. They always use your own values against you. So my take on it, I think you're right to criticize me. And you probably didn't see this, but I did a video after, you could maybe go back and find it, a live stream I did after the assassination attempt where I'm like, I'm weak. I spent years saying, turn the other cheek. I spent years saying, just because they want to cancel us doesn't mean we should cancel them. And that's largely still where I'm at. But I'm not going to be the type of person that leads us to successfully fighting back. Because as long as it's me versus them and they say, fuck you, we'll throw the book at you every time. We'll do everything possible to censor you, lock you up, harm you. We don't give a shit. And me saying, I'm not going to retaliate like that, I will lose. Over a long enough period of time, I will lose. That's just game theory. So it's going to take people saying, we're going to put the same consequences on you that you seek to put on us. And unfortunately, I'm too weak for that. I don't have it in me. I don't have that level of hatred. I do this as a hobby. I like being a dad. I like being a husband. I don't want to come on here and talk to people that I despise and go to bed like wishing them the most horrible thing, getting locked up. I don't want to do that, losing their job. But that makes me weak. So I follow your criticism of me. I do.
Sorry about this. I gotta go. My kid's crying. So
okay. Well, hey, thanks for calling in. And I did see your message. I'm sorry I didn't respond back, but call it back anytime.
Yeah. Have a good one. Bye bye.
All right. Equisia. Am I saying that wrong? Equisia.
It's Equisia. It's Greek, but Scott fixed his mic problems.
Okay.
So
look at that! Another. What altruistic people? Okay, I'll bring you in after Scott. Thank you. All right. Scott, can you hear me? There you. I think I hear you. Can you hear me, Scott? I heard a little bit there. Oh, okay. What's up, man? Sorry for having to wait so long.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Awesome. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah. So my someone called me while I was on hold, and so it took away Discord's function on my microphone.
Yeah, I've had that happen to me. Yeah.
This is like I've never really done this. So anyway, well, dude, I wanted to say thank you for what you do, man. It's super important. Yeah, I don't know how you have the patience you have. It is amazing. I'm over here yelling and screaming for you.
Sometimes it's difficult. You know what's shitty? Like, this is the truth. So someone like the gentleman that called in there, with the sort of expertise in international law. I almost have less patience for him in the most unfair way, and that's because I respect them and respect the opinion he's saying, and I feel like I want to talk to people I disagree with. So I think a lot of times when people are agreeing with me or that I find that they're being completely reasonable and I just don't have anything to add, it's not that I like don't have patience where I'm like, I hate you, shut up. It's just like, oh, okay, cool. We'll talk some other time once I have more information on this. But I seem to have endless patience with some of the worst people. I don't know. It's a character flaw at some points, but I guess it could be beneficial at times.
I don't know how, like, the whole destiny of it. I'm libertarian hippie, by the way. I don't know.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you for the donation. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you got it. Hey, man, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's important what you're doing, and the fact you're doing it as a hobby means it's more important to support it.
Thank you.
Yeah, dude, I'm
well,
like a real American.
I will take your money. That money will go in part to. We took my kid to a little mini zoo today, and we dropped about $100 between getting in and then buying copious amount of animal crackers, carrots, and apples to feed to all the animals. So that's where that'll be.
There you go. Nice. Yeah, I'm an uncle myself, but my hippie path took me down 10 years of bad decisions. So. Didn't have the opportunity yet to build a family, but maybe
you'll
someday.
Get there. Yeah, maybe. And hey, man, I lived with hippies. I was hippie adjacent. So I had my debate partner and my roommate was a Buddhist. Like, I don't know if you heard me say it. He was all the bad. Like, he wasn't super into drugs and stuff. And at that point, I was an alcoholic. So I'm like, great, a hippie, let's party. And he'd be like, I don't know. I'm kind of just going to listen to Fish and hang out. I'd be like, what? What is going on? But then I used to go to a lot of like concerts. I liked going to a lot of, there was a little concert in the area where I live. It was called Farm Jam. It's like a 3-day festival. I'd go to that every year. And it's just, you got half the people like me that are just drunks. And then half the people that are like hula hooping and, stoners, hippies. So I'm aware of the hippies. I'm aware, and I too made a bunch of bad decisions. I just ran into the greatest woman who happened to be compatible with me at the right time. We'll be married 10 years here in September. Will be our 10th year, and I didn't think I'd ever want kids, and I'm 40 now. My son is 3, so I started being a dad late. But I recommend it, man. I recommend finding someone you love and having kids. It's the way to go.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's definitely the way to go, and especially because without it, there is no future, quite literally. Yeah.
It's weird. I saw this interview with Jerry Seinfeld the other day where he was explaining, he's like, you can't explain to someone what having a kid does to you. You think you can. Before you have a kid, you're like, I get it, but you don't. Like, until that moment, you just don't. There's nothing you could say that, like, will impart that feeling. And it's life's weird like that. I remember when I was a kid, I was talking about this today, believe it or not, at dinner. I had this dog named Snuffy that my brother named because he was a wiener dog, a red miniature Dachshund. And my brother, who was younger than me, named him after the Snuffleupagus from...
Snuffleupagus, nice.
So his name was Snuffy.
By the way, a little interjection, Snuffleupagus is the only imaginary character that became real in any TV show.
That's amazing. So he started off as imaginary? Wow, that's...
As Big Bird's imaginary friend, and then he became real.
That's amazing. Man, Big Bird, killing it, making him... So, but when he died, I remember thinking as like an 11-year-old, he got hit by a car. And I remember thinking like, I don't think I ever want another dog again because I was never this sad. So even though I loved having a dog, when it ends, it's never so sad. That's sort of like part of being a dad for me is like, I'm scared about shit that I never thought was possible. Like today, like the little stuff, we're walking around this little zoo and there's roots that are coming up off the ground. We're looking at these deers and my little man trips and falls on this root and almost like cracks his head on a rock. Now, as drunken former alcoholic, I walk over that route even if I fall. There's nothing I'm ever looking at there like, oh, this is a possible danger. But now I'm like, oh my God. People tell me after your first kid that shit stops. It's like you get a little, but right now I'm in the mode where it's like, oh, that slide looks really big, buddy. You sure you want to go down that? Oh shit, So let me real quick. Gasai, thank you again for another super chat, $10. Says, sadly, I think the left is using people's principles against them to the point where you must ask, what point do you stop defending free speech and those wanting to take yours away? Yeah, it's a great point. I think that's definitely true. You hear this a lot with Christian. If you're Christian, you hear this a lot where people will say like, "Well, what would Jesus do?" You know, and they'll make some point that says, and they don't care. They don't care at all. Right? They don't care at all. They're not Christian. They don't care, but they know they could use your principles against you. So it's
especially when people don't even know what their principles are, which is a case with many Christians, right? They don't even understand the text because they've never read it.
That's right.
So, hey, I actually have some questions. Okay.
Sure, let's do it. Yeah.
I'm super philosophical. So what is it that you call yourself?
I consider, so politically, I assume you mean, politically I use 3 labels for myself. One of them sort of interchangeable. Populist, first and foremost. By populist, I mean that I think that the institutions that make up our cultural institutions and government institutions no longer care about the average person. They don't care if you're Christian, they don't care if you're Muslim, they don't care if you're atheist, white, black, man, woman, trans, straight, gay, they don't care. Your voice matters nothing for them. They are concerned about them and their allies and entrenching their institutional power. And I think that no matter what your political beliefs are, that until we end that corruption, nothing else matters in politics. So me and you could have a vehement disagreement about Medicare for all, but it's irrelevant if our voice doesn't matter. If the people in charge will say, we're just going to do what we want. So I call myself a populist first. The next label I'd put on myself, I would call it either, I've heard people call it minarchist, I call it libertarian adjacent. So I feel that the most important principle that our government could live up to is the principle of individuality and of liberty, and that we should have a smallest government as possible. I'm not an ANCAP. I do believe there should be some amount of government, but my underlying principle is to default to liberty-minded principles, which is that we should always prioritize the individual, except in extreme circumstances or very mundane things that we should accept, like I'm okay for taxation to fund a military. I think that the taxation is ridiculous, way too big, etc. But that's basic. So I consider myself a libertarian second. And then third, I consider myself conservative. And as such, that puts me as not very conservative compared to many other people. So there are a lot of streamers like my friends at the Crucible, Andrew Wilson, far more conservative than me. A streamer named Aircraft Sparky, far more conservative than me. And it makes it difficult because I think a lot of people really are looking for a talented conservative debater to go into these spaces. And sadly, sometimes I'm the best we got. And so I'll give you an example. Like, because I consider myself more libertarian adjacent than conservative, I'm okay with gay marriage. That's not conservative.
Interesting.
Conservatives don't like that. Right? Because I say, well, I don't think the government should be involved in the institution of marriage. But if they are, I don't think they should be able to discriminate based on sort of same-sex identification. Now, what I will say is I have a clever way of working around that. I think the government should be involved in the promotion of childbirth, but then they should give the benefits that come with marriage to parents that have conceived biological births that are still together. So that would basically take care of the straight marriage thing financially, because for me, the promotion of marriage primarily is about the promotion of families and having children. And so I want them specifically incentivizing people having children. But that's what I consider myself philosophically.
All right. And then what is knowledge?
Whew, that's a difficult question, right?
But just a simple answer, like just, like something that's kind of just a throwaway, like you'd say to a buddy.
Knowledge are the lessons that we've learned and the understanding we have of how life operates. Is that okay? Just off the top of my head.
Sure.
I'm not. Yeah. I am. Now, I will say this when it comes to.
I get it. That makes perfect sense. These questions are so I can understand your perspective.
Yeah,
right?
I think
because I'm like extremely philosophical, esoteric, existential.
I am not, right? And so it's. I have a lot of friends that are. I'm a very simple person. I'm very pragmatic.
I love it.
I think that I have some good fortune. I'll tell you a little about my backstory here. So I have a lot of people close in my life that have had significant medical issues, and it's a real bummer. And I've been very lucky. I have this herniated disc now, but as far as sort of mental health, I think that I'm extremely lucky. Like extremely, particularly because my field is working with people with developmental disabilities, mental health issues, autism, things like that. So I'm very connected to that, and I understand just how lucky I am. And I'm also lucky that I grew up, even though we were basically poor, I grew up with two parents that cared. And now I'm extremely lucky that I have an awesome wife. Her family's awesome. I love hanging out with them. I have an awesome son. And so for me, I understand sort of that life's not this easy for 99% of people. That I go through life and it's like it's easy to have a smile on my face because things are going good. Maybe it's not that easy if you didn't have a good family situation. Maybe that's not that easy if you have terminal illness or, you know, some other form of disability. And I think that that shaped my perspective and not being very philosophical because for me, I'm just like, I don't,
funny.
You know,
I had, like, especially as a young child, a bunch of different medical interactions that kind of changed the way I viewed people. So, for example, I was like born with a tumor on my face, and I had to have it removed when I was in third grade. And I had like a giant, like, piece of surgical tape that was clear on the side of my head, but it was like covered, encrusted in blood. And adults would turn around and see me and have like a jump scare reaction. And I was third grade. So what is that? Is that 8 years old?
That's crazy, yeah. 8,
and
9,
so at a very young age, I was thinking, like, why do people do and think what they do and think?
Yeah, I think that most of my philosophy comes from understanding how lucky I am. And so I think that I would look at people in my life that sometimes would always want to discuss where life let them down, right? Where, you know, I didn't have much money, or my, you know, this bad situation happened, or my car broke down, or I was in this terrible wreck. And that's understandable. But I always tried to tell myself, I can't control what life throws at me. All I can control is how I interact with it, how I deal. And so for me, I'm always trying to remind myself, because obviously we all have terrible days. And I went through some stuff. I'm not going to get into it because it's more family stuff, but I had some very difficult family stuff that went into being like a young teenager. And I just sort of had this epiphany one night where it was like, instead of being morose and wallowing in self-pity, I just said, how can I help this situation? What can I do? And it kind of led to me growing up a little, and just I don't know. It's been easy to just roll that perspective for the past 25 years, where I've just tried to roll that perspective and be like, every morning I wake up like, my God, I'm one of the luckiest people that's ever lived. So, and because of that, you know, it's difficult. I think I just think different than some of my more esoteric friends. Like, if I'm on the Crucible and I'm talking to Andrew Wilson and he's like, where do your fundamental principles of morality come from? You know, and it's like, well, I guess I'm a Christian. I'm not a denominational Christian, but I'll be honest, some of it's picking and choosing. That's true. And if you're someone I know great people, happy people too. I'm not saying you have to be miserable to be philosophical.
I kind of agree that headcanon is real. Like, I kind of disagree with Andrew on the whole headcanon thing, you know, like, I agree and disagree. I agree structurally and sociologically, but I disagree interpersonally, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But okay. So,
but go ahead. Yeah.
So then I got to. Okay, where do you think memories are stored?
Interesting question. I would think that there is certainly a science to it, like where it's literally stored in our brain. But maybe I'm also influenced by perspective on that because I went through grandparents that had dementia. And so it's difficult to see that. I think there is a spiritual component to memory. I mean, here's a deep philosophical question. If your cells change every 10 years, are you the same person you were 15 years ago? You know, like, these are deep philosophical questions. I've thought of these things. You know, memory, I think there is something beyond just the scientific process of who we are and the experiences that we've lived. That's certainly true. But certainly you can't deny the science of it, because you could see people that you love and that had loving relationships that can't remember them. I saw that with my grandma.
Right.
No doubt my grandma loved my family, and yet she couldn't remember them at the worst stages. So there has to be a physical component of where those memories are stored. But if you really want to get like deep into this, right, one of the things that some people have talked about in the field I working with people with autism, is autism they call a spectrum. I think some of it's sort of hoodoo, the way the science behind autism goes. But this is part
everything's a spectrum.
Right. This is part that I agree that I think the fundamental characteristic of autism is sort of people that are interpreting the world through their senses in a different way than me and you. So,
right, yeah, because originally autists were considered people that had like, what do they call it when you like hear music but you see colors?
Yeah, like a mushroom trip, right? That's what it reminds me of.
Well, no, I mean, no, because I've had plenty of those.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. I have too. I went through a drug phase, but that's the closest I could come to telling people what autism's like, right? If you've ever done a drug and all of a sudden you taste a color, and you're like, what is that? And you're probably not screwed up enough that you're like, oh my God, you understand what's happening. You're like, well, I'm high and I'm tasting this color. Yeah. But imagine that life was like that. Imagine that you caught a physical pain when you hear a loud noise, like literally a physical pain, like a pain in your arm. Like that stuff happens with people with autism. Yeah. And for me, you know, it became very interesting to like understand, like, okay, like we have the way we perceive the world is through these sort of physical, you know, senses that we have and physical sensory input that we have, but at the same time there does seem to be some other part to it. There seems to be some spiritual component that you just can't put your finger on. So it is difficult, but again, I don't think I'm the best person in thinking about those kind of things, because oftentimes I just say like,
well, yeah,
it's working
out
for me.
I asked you all those to ask you this, right?
Okay.
So do you agree? So my perspective is the first attack on Americanism was the Federalist Papers and the formation of the Constitution.
I think, to some extent, yes. I still think that the formation of the Constitution is probably the best foundational document in any major country that we've had. But certainly there are truths to that.
The Articles of Confederation are so much better.
Well, okay. But they didn't work for a reason.
Why not?
Well,
why didn't they?
They didn't work because it didn't lead to a cohesive federal government, right?
That was the point of them, wasn't it?
Well, yes and no. Yes, that makes sense in an ideal world, but I would guess, I'm not a student of history, but I would guess one of the big concerns was infighting between the states if there wasn't a cohesive federal government, and more importantly, probably a fear that outside nations like France or Britain could decide that they're going to come and take advantage of a weak, non-centralized, burgeoning nation. I don't disagree. I'll say this.
So the courts are more important than to keep the nation together. The courts are more important. Is that what you're saying? Like to have courts?
Not necessarily just the courts. I think that I'm saying, like, I agree with you that, like, from a perspective of, like, being libertarian, right? Of course, the Constitution is going to do a lot of things that are coercive, which as a libertarian you find immoral, right? Again, I'm not someone who's steeped in libertarian philosophy. Go ahead.
I don't know if I would actually say I'm a libertarian. This name's super old.
Okay.
I would say I'm a Jeffersonian.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. What do you think, when you say that the Constitution's where things went awry, what do you think the core principle of what the United States was that the Constitution helped lead it awry?
Yeah, the core principle is that we were 50 independent nations that were united around one common self-interest. Well, obviously it wasn't 50 back then, right? But we're all independent nation states that were united around one common interest, which was self-protection, right? We all understood that we came to seek a life together. We don't all seek the same life. Therefore, every state should be able to determine its own way of life based on those who choose to settle there. Because back then, settlements were very much ideological. And that's what big cities and states were built off of. And they wanted to protect the culture, and they saw each community as an individual that they wanted to protect, as well as the individual person, but ultimately it was all about protecting the family unit. So that's my explanation.
Yeah, I think that I have a similar outlook. I think that what separated the United States as its founding was that it was the first successful country that focused on the individual, right? That just basically said, it's not a class of people that will make our country great. If we maximize the individual, that as a whole will make our country greater. So I think that's a very similar thing to what you're saying, right?
So here's an interesting conundrum. This is the debate between the Federalists and Anti-Federalists, is like the ultimate individual in the Anti-Federalists is the family. Mm-hmm. Because if we don't have families, we have no future. Mm-hmm. And the Federalists believe that the ultimate individual was the individual. And I think this is also where libertarians generally go wrong, because if you focus on the individual, then you just end up with hedonism, and there's no other outcome.
It's definitely interesting. I think that is. I probably lean towards the family interpretation of it as well, though I will have to plead ignorance on the specifics of the Federalists and Anti-Federalists. I hate to cut you off, but I was going to try to end by midnight, and I have 2 more callers.
Yeah,
but you can call in any time, man.
Man, I appreciate it.
It's difficult for me to take calls when I'm not at home, because most of the time I'm just streaming if I'm at work and I'm off the clock on my phone. So I don't know how to take Discord calls while I'm streaming to YouTube on my phone. But anytime I'm back home and I don't have a debate or something, feel free to hop in the Discord. I'd love to further the conversation. So.
Yeah, thank you so much for the time, man. I appreciate it. And thanks again for what you do, dude, because literally just having the ability to talk with someone about their ideas long enough to expose their internal corruption that motivates their ideas is what's going to save the world and nothing else.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And thanks for the donations. Look forward to hearing from you soon.
By the way, can you tell I'm a salesman?
See, I briefly went into a foray of selling life insurance. That's terrible. People are like, "You're a good talker. You'd be good." I couldn't do it. I couldn't pressure people, man. I just couldn't do it. So
I love it. I know.
All right,
have
man.
a great night. Thank
Take
you.
it easy. Thank you. All right, let's get to Equisia, and then we'll get to Gibbs, and then that'll probably be it for the night. So if you get in the chat after that, I'll probably be ended.
No.
I'm now mispronouncing your name again, but Equisia. We'll call you X.
It's Equisia.
Equisia.
You can call me X.
All right.
Yeah.
What's up? Thank you so much.
No problem. So you said something earlier that I wanted to kind of circle back around.
Okay.
You know, you called yourself weak when it comes to principles because you turn the other cheek. Mm-hmm. And because of that, the political left and people like Destiny are willing to use your own principles against you to try and win arguments and stuff. Mm-hmm. And while I understand the point that you made, and they do that, I don't want to say it pisses me off, because I'm not mad at you or people who make this point. Mm-hmm. I'm just sort of mad that this point is believed. Like, the biggest strength that we have as conservatives and as people who are standing on Judeo-Christian values is the principle. If we decide to abandon that principle for the sake of winning, we are no better than the people that we're fighting.
Well, let me say this. Most of the times the way I say this is that my greatest strength is my greatest weakness, and that is I'm a principled person, right? And so it is true that it is a weakness, but it's also a strength. The reality is that I don't know if you're Christian, if you're religious. So I don't talk about religion all that often. I consider myself a Christian, albeit a poor one. But I'll say this. If you're Christian, then you know the ultimate goal is beyond this world, right? And so you know how the game ends. You know what happens. You know that there is ultimate justice, even if not in this world, and that beyond. But even if you're not Christian or religious, what really happens when you die? Are people going to remember that sweet-ass debate that you had, on that panel that one time where you dunked on all these lefties? Are they going to remember that you ran for town council and did really good? Are they going to remember that you were a congressman and did really good? No. With very few exceptions, 100 years after we're dead, not many people remember much about you. So the real things that matter in life are, can you look at yourself in the mirror You could lie to everyone else. You could lie to every single person you talk to in your real life on a stream. But at the end of the night, you're in bed with your thoughts. And you can't lie to, you could try, and maybe some people are able to, but I can't. I'm my own worst judge. And I have a family. And those are people that I can't lie to, which again, I can, but those are the people that matter the most to me. And so those things are most important to me. So I'm unwilling to sacrifice who I am and become an immoral person for the sake of some perceived victory, because that victory, if it cost me the things that are most important, my own self-worth, the worth of me in the eyes of my family, the worth of me in the eyes of God, then I've lost the battle. I agree with that. When I say weakness, what I'm talking about is purely from a gamesmanship theory of winning the battle politically or culturally in this world. It is true that if we have two sides, just hypothetically any two sides, and they're roughly evenly matched, and those sides are going to have various battles for 100 years, and one side is unscrupulous and willing to use any tactic necessary to win, including lying, including enforcing standards on their opponents that they're unwilling to hear to themselves, and the other side is principled and unwilling to do that and will hold themselves to standards that they're trying to hold their opponents to that their opponents don't care about. Inevitably, the side without principle will win. They will. Another way to put this is Jordan Peterson, when he's talking to Joe Rogan, and he's asking sort of how did we get to the point of like brutal authoritarianism with like the Nazis, and Jordan Peterson says one step at a time. And what happens is as these two, this side will encroach, it'll encroach until right here. They push you back a little and you say enough's enough. And then they back off a little. Then they encroach, and they push you a little and a little and a little. And then finally you're over here because they're unscrupulous. They don't care. And that eventually wins in this world without some sort of cosmic intervention. That's going to win. So when I say I'm weak, what I'm saying is there will be people that pick up the torch and they're going to say, no, we're going to use the tactics they used against us. And they'll start to get victories. They will. And it won't be me. I am not the soldier that's picking up the claymore like William Wallace and charging into the battlefield saying, you wanted to behead me? I'll behead you. That's not who I am. And that's what it's going to take. Probably, I don't mean the physical violence. That's obviously a metaphor. But it will take people saying, you want to, it takes someone like Robbie Starbuck saying, I'm contacting every conservative business in the country and I'm outing them as DEI. I'm doing it to John Deere. I'm doing it to Tractor Supply. I'm doing it to Harley Davidson's. That's not me. I'm not doing that stuff, right? And so that's what I'm talking about. And I'm not saying that you have to be to the point of immorality, right? Like, the best example I could use, the first time I remember saying this was the situation with the woman at Home Depot?
Yes, I remember that.
Do you
support that? On principle, no. Her actions and what she said are deplorable. And if she got fired for it naturally because her boss found out about it, I would have been fine with that.
But showing up at her place of work and screaming at her while you're filming it and then making it viral?
Yeah, I felt like that was excessive. Like,
I wouldn't have done it. But
I wouldn't have done it either.
But
I'm not mad that she got fired.
Well, here's the thing, though. If someone didn't do that and she never got fired and it never went viral and no one did, then the next time there's an assassination attempt on a populist, do you think things would change? Of course not. Right? We live in a society like this. I don't know if you've experienced this. I'll be curious if people in the audience have experienced. I'm a Trump supporter. Probably half of the friends I have that aren't family are Trump haters. And that's because I made a lot of friends in college where I was on the debate team, which is the left of the left. So those people hate Trump. But we have a mutual sort of understanding. We don't really talk about politics that much because it'll end up in a big argument. So I can't tell you how many times a situation like this will come up. I get invited to a wedding. No, to me, a wedding's a very serious event. I'm not going there to make an ass of myself or make it about me. And yet when I get there, all of these other people decide they're going to talk about politics and they're going to shit on my politics. And they're going to tell me what a piece of shit I am for the political beliefs I have. And then it's up to me to be like, yeah, you're right. You're right. Anyways, how about this turkey? How about the chicken? to try to deflect and move the story on or move the scenario on, because I don't want this to become about me and then all of a sudden my pride arguing back. That's the society we live in. We live in a society, and it's starting to change slowly, where culturally there is no repercussions to you coming out and saying, I hate Republicans. I hate Trump supporters. I think they're terrible. I think they're racist and blah, blah, blah. There's no repercussions. But if you were to come out and say the same about the Democratic Party or about progressivism or about liberals or the left in general, you could legitimately get fired. You could be ostracized from polite society. You'll be considered a nuisance, etc., etc. And so the question is, how do we change that? And unfortunately, my solution doesn't work, which my solution was articulate how bad that is, because that leads to a low trust society where it sort of increases the division between people and leads to sort of hyperbolic argumentation and fighting in real world situations. That argument failed. It failed miserably. And so what's going to lead the change? That woman from Home Depot getting fired. That'll lead the change. Jack Black and Kyle Gass from Tenacious D being shamed into quitting their tour. That'll start to get the ball changing. Places like John Deere having to beg and apologize for having DEI on their website. That'll get the ball moving. That's true. There's no, and when I say I'm weak, I'm saying I don't do that. I can't do it. I can't.
I'm with you there. I don't know if I can do it either. And this sort of betrays my former liberal leanings, because I used to be very liberal, but I don't like how that feels.
Right. Well, that's it. That's how I'm like, listen, Cruz 465. Thank you so much for the super chat for $10. Says, I'm really bummed out that so many Americans are allergic to common sense. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I mean, for example, I debate people all the time that probably objectively hate me, but I don't want them to lose their channel or to lose their job. I would feel terrible. I would. Yeah, I wouldn't lose sleep, but I don't want someone I debate. I didn't want Destiny to be banned because of the shit he said about the Trump assassination attempt. I didn't. I don't want that. A dude called in last night and made it. Did you listen to the show last night?
No, I was at work.
Okay, this guy calls in the show last night. Just calls in to talk. Said I'd talked to him before. He's a Destiny fan. He's talking about violence and inciting violence. I get him to admit within 3 minutes that Biden's inciting violence against Trump, and I think Trump supporters as well. He concedes that. Then we have some him and Han for a while, and then he's basically like, "Well, it's good that Biden's inciting violence because Trump's a fascist." And I was like, "Do you wish that bullet would have killed Trump?" And he's like, "Am I allowed to say it?" I was like, "Sure, go ahead." He's like, "Yeah." And it's like, that's as disgusting, as despicable as I can imagine. I booted him off the show immediately. I don't want that guy to lose his job. I'm not going to look to find that guy's real name and try to cost him his career. There'd be some that say maybe he deserves it. What if that guy's an elementary school teacher? Is that the type of personality you want instructing your children? So maybe there would be those that would say the moral thing to do would be to find out what this guy does. He just called for the assassination of a presidential candidate. But I don't want that. I don't have it in me. I don't want my audience to do that. I don't want that dude to get fired. I think that dude is irrational and young and caught up in a wave of emotion that's clouding his judgment, and he has a moral superiority complex where he's capable of wishing the greatest evils on people for political disagreements. But I don't want him fired. So, I mean, it's difficult, man.
I get it. This isn't even what I wanted to ask you.
I'm sorry. Okay.
It's okay. No, it's okay. It's just I heard you say it. I'm like, oh my god, this isn't even what I want to talk about. I got to talk about it.
Not to rush you on, but
it's really simple. Sure. The other day I heard you say, and I may be misremembering because I work, and unfortunately I don't always get to pay attention to the stream. But you said that you thought Kamala was going to win the election, and I just want to know how the hell you think that's going to happen.
Because I think that the corruption is so severe that they will not leave Donald Trump win again. I think that there will be scandal after scandal. They'll throw him in jail if they have to. There'll be another attempt on his life if they have to. There'll be, I guess, let me phrase it this way. It's not so much that Kamala will win, it's that Trump won't be allowed to win. It might be that they replace Kamala Harris. It might be that she continues to change positions every day up until the election. It might be that there's some heinous terrorist attack that occurs against Joe Biden or against Democrats to have sympathy for them. It might be that we enter World War III. It might be that they decide they're going to send every American $10,000 to ensure that they win. It might be that the mainstream media decides to be more propagandist than they already have been. Maybe a video surfaces of Trump shouting the N-word repeatedly. Maybe 10 more women come forward to say that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance sexually assaulted both of them at the same time. Maybe Taylor Swift decides to come out and she tilts the level of corruption and propaganda that we're going to see will make 2020 and 2016 pale in comparison. And so that's why I think, I'm not saying, oh, Kamala is a very shrewd political person and she's going to win. No, she's terrible, but they won't let her lose, or more likely they won't let Trump win. That's my feeling.
All right. Well,
yeah,
I'm not gonna lie. That's really like doomer of you.
Yeah, it is. That's not to even get into questions of ballot harvesting, changes to the laws that we've had in places like Pennsylvania that nothing's really changed. Of course it's doomer. Now, let me give you some optimism with it, though. That's just the way I think anyways. So first off, I also said the same thing in 2016, and I was wrong. Now, I said it in 2020, and I was right, but I was wrong in 2016.
I think a lot of people were wrong in 2016.
Yeah, so I'm batting 50% on the predictions in the last two presidential elections. So take that for what it's worth. I'm certainly not infallible. The other thing is this. There's this show I like. It's called Meat Eater. It's a hunting show. It stars this guy, Steve Rennell. He's fantastic. I really like the show. I think he's great. Best hunting show I've ever seen by a mile. I recommend it highly to anyone. Even if you're not really into hunting, I think just he's a brilliant guy that's worth listening to. There's this episode where I think he's archery hunting, if I'm remembering, and he's hunting deer. And I don't know how much people know about archery. I know very little. But you have to be very precise in your shot, because even with a gun, you could have a bad shot. But with bow, it's even more blatant. Maybe his rifle. It doesn't matter. Any form of hunting, it's ethical to make sure that you have a clean kill shot. You don't want to be taking pot shots that maybe wound the animal, because then they suffer and you end up not being able to track the deer, and then you end up losing the meat and everything, which was the point of hunting in the first place. And so he shoots this deer and it's not a clean shot. And you can tell he's pretty emotional about it. And he's like, that's something that every hunter hates happening. You don't want that to happen. You don't want the deer to suffer or the animal to suffer. And he's tracking the deer. He's trying to find it. And he's like narrating over it. And he says, I know I'm not going to find this deer. And then the next line he says that's stuck with me ever since I heard it. He said, I'm pessimistic with my mind, but optimistic with my feet. And what he's saying there is he keeps telling himself, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to fail. I'm not going to fail. But with his feet, with his actions, he keeps moving forward. He keeps doing everything necessary to ensure he succeeds. And that's how I operate in life. I always want to operate from a position of being the underdog. Of even if we're winning by 50 points, saying it's not over. We can still lose. We have to keep going. So I'm always pessimistic when it comes to politics in my head, which encourages me by my actions to be more proactive. If you go into election night thinking, we're 50 points ahead, we got this in the bag, then what happened to Hillary Clinton happens to you in 2016. But if you say, we're still going to lose this thing, we need to get every possible vote, we need to push as hard as possible. So, I have preconditioned myself to be pessimistic. I have been wrong in the past. But I still think I'm right this time that Trump's not going to win. I do think that. So, hopefully I'm not too doomer-pilled. If that makes sense.
For America's sake, I hope you're wrong.
Me too. Hey, here, you want to get really doomer-pilled? Even if Trump wins, he probably won't do anything. That's your real doomer pill. He'll at least not move the ball forward as much as Kamala Harris would, or whoever the Democrat would be would. But is he going to disband the FBI? No. Is he going to still do interviews with Maggie Haberman at the New York Times? Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. But the real red pill, am I getting the pills right? The real red pill, the real optimism isn't even politics, it's culture. It's people waking up to just how bad sort of materialistic society and secular society has been, and the importance of family and sort of the conservative values that this country and most great countries were built on. That culture there's a great chance of it changing in significant ways before our politics changes. And then once that culture changes, it makes it easier for our politics to change. So as far as I'm concerned, yeah. But I do got to let you
Okay.
go. I got to let you go.
I was just about to say, you've got 2 people in there. Let me get the heck out of your way.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Call back sometime. Thanks. All right. I did say I wasn't going to take anyone else other than Gibbs. What's up? We'll bring Gibbs on here real quick, and then B10.
Oh.
What's up, Gibbs? How you doing?
Good, Papa. How you doing?
Oh, I see
You
you
living
in
the
video
dream?
there. Yeah, I'm doing all right. Let's see if I can bring you
Yeah. Public was always ready. I literally left the show I was doing just to come yell at you.
Did you yell? Oh, here we go.
I
No,
don't
go
know.
for it. Go for
I'm
it, man.
just kidding. I'm just
That's
talking
fine.
with you. I mean, not yell. First, I'm going to ask you, you're a red-blooded American, conservative patriot, and I have a question for you. What is today?
Today, I know yesterday was no SpongeBob Day. So
I didn't know that, but
Yeah, you missed
today is Friday.
it is Friday. That's true.
Yeah. And what do you do on Fridays as a red-blooded American male patriot? What do you do?
Go to bed early. That's what I try
No,
to do.
no, you drink. Cheers to Rob the World. Cheers to Rob the World.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you.
salute.
I'm gonna bring myself up over here. Well, let's see.
Yeah, there you go.
I got one.
Thanks for having me on, Rob. Thanks for having me on.
All right. I have not drank this bottle. Set my
Oh,
room
you can
untouched.
actually drink one other shot. Oh, I'm
got-
so excited.
I
I
got
don't think I've ever.
a little Cavassier.
Cavassier. Oh, you got a little Cavassier. I'll put the shades down for the Cavassier.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
a little
I
drink.
can't believe you actually get drink with it. Yeah, a
I'll
little
drink
drinky
one.
poo.
I'll drink one on a Friday.
Yeah, a little drinky
Cheers.
poo. You know what I'm saying?
All right.
Yeah,
Oh,
conservative.
if you're gonna put glasses on, I don't have shades, but I got my Harry Potter left.
Don't you like these? Aren't these good?
It's nice.
They fucking yeah. I got the red ones that are clear, so I go to the club and I go to the girls and I have the red ones on. It's like I see into your heart. And then if I had the black ones on, there's no love.
It's like you look like Shawn Michaels. You remember? him?
Yeah. The Heartbreak Kid.
Yeah. All right. Cheers.
Salute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice
Good
seeing you,
to drink with a conservative. There's not very many of us.
Yeah, I know, right? We're a dying breed on these social
You know,
media
and
platforms.
and then what's fun is like I know you're a different kind of conservative than I, but I'm a conservative, and I know you're a conservative, even if we're different.
Yeah.
Versus like counter Connor.
Progressive victory points.
You mean counter conservative? You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
I still like him, to be honest. I think he's a dad. He seems like a good dad. But
No, he's a shill. Anyway, listen, let's talk about politics. Hey, I got 2 bones to pick with you. One, so you got the college debate style. Did you do LD or CX, or did you do the third one that they have now?
policy. I did policy. So Lincoln Douglas is
Yeah.
similar to policy, except it's
I
one-on-one.
did LD. I did LD and CX back in the day. So I'll tell you this,
Cross-section.
we've had-
CX is what you're talking about. That would be considered policy debate. Cross.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You would do the Anyway, I tell you what. So we've been on some panels. I think the third panel we on, no problem, because I said something to you and you let me go. The only motivation, I was like, yeah, this guy thinks I don't know what I'm doing, but what I'm doing is we trapping him. I'm over here with that bullshit. I'm trying to draw him in, act like I'm dumb, and then we're gonna get him with the fucking side. And I was like, just let me go. Don't help him. You're like Gibbs. I already went. I'm like, no, just let me do my thing. Just let me go.
Well, here's the problem, right? And it's not you.
We
It's
play
me.
different styles.
Yeah, and I say this all the time. It's not a matter of who's a good debater and who's not. The problem is if you have a panel of 8 people, 4 great people on one side and 4 on the other, it's detrimental to everyone because what happens is everybody has their own argument that they're setting up. And I know the way you debate similar to me, where you're setting something up.
It's very different than you. Yeah, well, I guess
But
that
it's
was
in that part of it. So you're not coming right. You're like, oh, well, you're getting them to admit something so that 20 minutes later you could say, but didn't you say this? Right?
Yeah, yeah, or I try to use the logic, and I'm like, this is common sense. I'm like, listen, 2 apples don't make an orange, but let me tell you, and then we get them. But yeah, see, we had some debate style issues, I think, there at the beginning. But it's good to see that conservative.
Yeah,
I know you don't. You're good people, and even if you did, you'd be like, fuck you, bitch. I'm a man.
Yeah, right? Yeah, well, I tried to tell them that at the beginning of that panel, and it's so funny. I love these fucking, listen, again, I like Connor, right? You could think he's a shill. He's a
good guy. No, he's a good guy.
But here's the thing, right? Like, I know
He's
he
not
got
conservative.
pissy with me at the end, but that's fine. We're men. It's okay. I started off saying that. Fucking suck it up. No problem. It's so funny, though, to watch all these fucking lefty shills that he sort of... It's like, oh, did you see, Robin Gibbs, freaking out because he's a progressive? I ain't freaking out. He wants to take money to shill for fucking progressives.
You know
That's
what's
his
crazy?
prerogative. I don't give a fuck.
Is what's her name? Brianna Wu. She
Leave her
called
alone.
him out. She called him out.
fucking with Brianna?
She called him out. She goes, "Listen, I don't agree with Gibbs on much, but right on this one. I was like, that's right. When Brianna Wu, the person giving you the Wu box, is calling you out.
Well, and
Gibbs wins.
they're, her and Connor do a show together, and she helped with
I know.
But yeah,
That's what I'm saying. If she says it, then we definitely know he lost that round.
It's just, I don't know, man. Like, I just feel like, I think that the truth about Connor is, for me, I think he doesn't like Trump, and that's fine. He's like, fuck it, I don't even feel.
Yeah.
You get black pill. Like, I'll be honest, if it was Jeb Bush versus Kamala Harris.
He's awful. I hated Jeb. I love George, not Jeb.
But, you gotta got a good, that's a good Trump voice there.
Man.
Did you do a good Trump impression?
Right? Frankly, let me tell you, nobody does a better Trump impression than Papa Gibbs. We call Rob conservative Rob. He's the best conservative. Nobody's better. Let me tell you.
That's good. That's very good.
Yeah. I've done it 2 times.
I do a decent Brianna Wu. That's all. But no, if it was Jeb versus Kamala, I'd be like,
I hated Jeb. I'm listening like I'm like a neocon guy, right? I'm like my era was like Cheney Bush.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. But my family had ties. My bro. It was. Listen, when I was with Cheney Bush got elected, listen, the rise was going for the Gibbs family, right? Like it was to the moon, right? Reagan, fuck that bitch. But like Bush, Cheney, great, yeah, it was good. And then he's out, Obama's in, bad times. And then now we got Trump. Trump. I've been saying this, and you're kind of a populist conservative, right? Mm-hmm. And I've been saying this, that Trump is a New York Republican.
Yeah, he's liberalish.
He's a Democrat. He's Bill Clinton. His policies are Bill Clinton. Like if you look at him, it's very similar. Like not all the way. I mean, there's a lot of differences, but it's pretty similar. And I did want to argue about one thing that is a difference between Clinton and Trump. So we can get some meat. I know you want to yell at somebody. And
you got like 3 minutes, so
yeah, that's fine.
The meat. Bring the big guns.
So Ukraine, bro. All right, I am like America first. Mm-hmm. I'm also like very invested in like military-industrial complex stocks. Okay. How can you be against the military-industrial complex that is America? Listen, America exports many things, but our number one export is ass whippings. And guess what we're doing? We're selling military-industrial shit to Ukraine. So why would you be against capitalism? Like I know that you're against it, and like,
well, it's not capitalism. Right? The government...
Is it, though?
No. The government forcing us to pay for weapons, which we're then giving away to another country, sort of the opposite of capitalism. Just saying that private weapons... What
if you buy stocks in those companies that they're buying from?
That's fine, but that's not capitalism. If a private weapon company wants to sell weapons to Ukraine, okay. But if our government's forcing taxation to fit the bill, then that's not capitalism.
No, that sounds like smart business. And here's why. What you could do is you could take your hard-earned paycheck and you can invest in like L3 Communications. You can invest in like Boeing. You can invest in like Raytheon. And then when the taxpayers take their money, and that's our money really, because we're hard-paying, Americans, we're paying the tax. When they take that, we're getting double paid. So we pay the government, and then the government's paying us again. Like, why would you not be a fan of that?
I'll tell you. You want to know why? Because I'm investing in groceries and my electric bill, and it's
that's
hard
Biden's
enough.
fault. That's Biden's fault.
I don't think the Republicans have helped by and large for years. But Gibbs, I'd love to talk to you at great length. Please call in again some other time. I do. Yeah, I gotta get to bed here soon. And this other guy really. Yeah, man, it's great hearing from you, and thank you for sharing a drink. We'll have to do it some Friday night for real sometime. Take it easy, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, one more. Maybe. There we go. All right, one more. I'll be here all night though. I was hoping to be done by midnight. So let's get what are you going by in here? ETM? BTEM. BTEM. Let's do it. Something real important to say. Now I don't have all night, but let's roll with it. All right, BT, what's happening? You there, sir? Sorry. BT, what's happening? Sorry, I couldn't hear you there. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, bro. I was going to stand up. But yeah, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. What's happening?
Hey, how are you, brother? Yeah, fuck. He's Destiny guy. He's bad faith. Trust me. He says he's for capitalism, right?
Destiny?
How on earth, Destiny? Yeah. How on earth would you vote for the worst of the worst leftists that are he literally said socialists are your neighbors. Mm-hmm. One man's socialist is another man's neighbor.
Yeah.
Tim Wolf.
Well, the problem with Destiny is he's an institutionalist. That's what he is deep down. And so he's going to
But that's the thing. The institutions have turned into these guys.
Well, I agree, but that's why I say he could call himself a capitalist, but it seems evident to me, based on his expounded political positions, that his core belief is defending the establishment institutions. And these institutions, they're not really socialist. They are what they are they are interested in selling any bullshit that they can to convince people to leave them entrenched power and then to entrench their own power. And so socialism 100%. Is a good tool for that, because when you give the government more power to create and spread wealth and to take wealth from people, they're going to
you'd rather be an authoritarian, to be honest.
Correct. So they're going to give it to them and their crony buddies first. But they're not socialists in the sense that they give a shit about like the working people. They don't care anything about that. So
no, not that type of socialism. No.
Right. So when Destiny claims to be a capitalist, he don't give two shits about that. He don't care at all.
100%. Yeah. Bro, there's this thing, right? I don't know if anyone's seen it. Okay, it's been censored from YouTube. Now it's called The Fall of Minneapolis. Have you heard of it?
This was it came out recently. It may have been from the past as well.
It came out by Alpha News about 8 months ago.
Yeah.
Now, my God, if Elon Musk fucking puts that on YouTube, on X, I guarantee you it will fucking tilt the election.
Yeah, I need to check it out.
You want to see an insurrection? So Destiny, fight, fucking, come on, tell me that's not worse than an insurrection.
Well, that's just it. I think that even in
police station fucking ran away, bro. Who does that?
In 2020, it was a huge mistake from the Trump's team. I said if I was them, every time they speak, I would have a monitor behind me showing the lefties rioting.
I know it's a mistake from Trump. But listen, you know what? He had moles in his fucking admin.
I agree.
There was an article in 2018 that said, I am a mole inside the Trump campaign. In 2018, it came out on New York Times. I've got the article from the Atlantic. Okay,
I agree.
He had moles implanted from the beginning, thwarting his every action.
It's not different this time, I don't think. I think that
no. But he's okay. At least he's got someone who's running the RNC that's part of his family. Okay, that's one thing. That's okay. All right. Yeah. Now Tim Vance, they say he was a never Trumper. All right. Now that's one thing. He speaks good. Now that's one thing. I don't know, man. I don't know. He could be the best actor in the world. I don't know.
I think that J.D. Vance is ultimately going to be a good actor. I think there are reasons to get pissy with some of the things Trump says. So I could see someone saying in the past, I don't like him. But I think that he's
a man's man.
I think he's a man's man. Yeah, I think he's a populist, J.D. Vance. And I think that he is someone that scares the shit out of the establishment, which is why they're having all these attacks on him. And that's exactly what we want, because you don't want a Mike Pence type person, because if you get Mike Pence, that means Trump will go to jail, be impeached, or be assassinated. You want someone that they're afraid.
Fauci. Yes. People keep pulling out Fauci. Guess who else was the snake? Burks. People keep forgetting the blonde Burks, bro.
Yeah. Bill Barr.
He was the fucking snake working with Pence. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Bill Barr was the worst, though. Like, because I think
but you know the blonde one that's doing the COVID thing, working with Pence.
Dr. Birx, yep, I know who you're talking about. Yeah,
I'm telling you now, there was a documentary about her, how she was literally working for the left, thwarting everything that the fucking Trump wanted. She was saying the other way and going through Pence to try to make Pence say it to him.
I don't disagree.
It's unbelievable, man.
I hate to say this. I got to be done by 12:30 here. I think we're going to try to set this up where we're going to try Fridays to do call-in shows. So please call in again. I'd love to talk to you at length. I really would.
100%, man. But please, seriously, show that documentary.
I will.
The Fall of Minneapolis.
I will try to do that. Thank you, man. I'd heard about it, and I'm glad you reminded me, because it's definitely something I want to check out. So
excellent, man. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for calling in, man. Take it easy. Great call. All right. All the callers tonight were excellent, and we got through it. We did it without one call to assassinate someone, unlike last night. Yay! Roar89, thanks so much for the $10 super chat. I was just talking about this. It's like having random callers. It's a fun thing to do on a Friday or something. I called in once in a while with a bad mic. I have a better one now and live and learn. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a great show. Plus, it's easier content for me, having to actually think up something. So, we win. We won the... we're not the shittiest community in the world. You know, well, not us, the ones we deal with. All right, let's do a raid. All right, so here's the deal. I probably should have spent tonight prepping, seeing as how I'm debating tomorrow night the world's most knowledgeable man on COVID, Elder Drazi. So that's gonna be 7 p.m. Eastern. I'll probably be on a half hour early or something like that. But should be fun. I'm looking forward to it, despite the chirpiness that we had. But I think it'll be fun. I'll approach it with the best of intentions, and we'll see what happens. We're going to raid If You're Feeling Adventurous. Haven't rated them in quite some time, so appreciate all the donations tonight. Thank you so much. All the callers, thank you so much. Even the ones that I got a little chirpy or disagreed with. I enjoyed our conversation. I don't mean anything by it. I hope that I came across as respectful, but be willing to talk to anyone that called in again tonight. On some other night. I thought it was a lot of fun. The donations are always appreciated. The chat's always appreciated. And thank you all just for tuning in. I appreciate appreciating you. Did I use the word appreciate enough? Also on YouTube, if you can give me a thumbs up if you're still there before you leave, that would be appreciated. So thank you. All right, enjoy my sweet outro music and this raid if you're on Twitch. Otherwise, thank you so much, everyone. As always, have a good one.